Hi guys, it's Ross Jeffries. Welcome to the instructional video module for January 2009. I hope you will forgive me for being a few days late with this. I had fighting a little bit of an illness, and then we got really obsessed with the January seminar that just completed. So I'll make up for it and make this extra special, and we'll endeavor to be on time in the future. So let's get going. The subject of this is how to transition into language patterns. Very often I get this question that, okay, I can do the walk up and I can get started talking, but it just feels awkward transitioning into patterns. How do I do it, Ross? Well, this video is going to address that question. Here's some reminders. Remember that a pattern is not just the long memorized speeches like the Discovery Channel pattern or the blowjob pattern. A pattern is any use of language that will capture and lead the imagination and emotion of women, open up the deeper levels of her mind, the third or fourth levels of her mind, and get the right brain going. So a pattern could be use of suggestive language, it could be embedded commands, questions, metaphors, jokes, etc. The other thing is, don't predict your outcome prior to experimenting. Your worries about getting caught or whether you'll feel awkward doing it may have no accurate information about what will really happen. And the other thing I want you to know is just because you're uncertain or nervous doesn't mean you're about to fail. Your uncertainty, your nervousness usually contains no information value whatsoever about what's going to happen in the outside world. It's just a report about what's going on in your own neurology. There may be no connection. So just because you're feeling nervous doesn't mean the other person isn't going to receive what you're about to do very well. You just don't know. I also want to give you this concept of gold coins, counterfeits, and fish hooks. Here's what I mean by this. Many guys think that using language patterns or using speed seduction is something they have to get away with, that they're going to get caught. Sort of like you're doing a minor crime, like picking someone's pocket or stealing their watch or maybe peeping in their window, if you hear of that persuasion. But in reality, this way of talking, this way of expressing yourself is what women hunger for. You're getting out the gold coin. Everyone else is counterfeiting with their 5 Bs. They're bullying, they're begging, they're buying, they're BSing, they're booze. You understand? The other aspect is a lot of guys' discomfort around using patterns has got to do with the fact that they wouldn't want to be talked to in this fashion. You as a guy think if someone talked to you with language patterns, you'd hit them in the face. Well, I like to use the metaphor of fishing. When you go fishing, you don't bait the hook with your favorite food. If you like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, that's not what you bait your hook with, right? You bait it with what the fish likes to eat. So this is what women like. If you don't believe me, go do some research. What is the most highest selling genre of books that outsells everything else? Romance novels. Another idea I want to give you is the idea that the worst that can happen when you try this stuff is that nothing will happen. 99% of the time, if something bad does happen. Now, I'm not saying that 99% of the time something bad will happen. I didn't say that. But when something does happen, bad does happen, of that universe of bad things, 90% of the time, the worst that happens is nothing will happen. She just won't respond. Finally, I want to remind you that sometimes in life, it makes sense to be dramatic and go for a heroic breakthrough, heroic progress with fantastic marathon dedication. Other times, you just want to do steady practice. Depending on where you are in your life, depending on what else is going on, one or both of these may work better for you. I recommend steady practice. Let's talk about transitioning into patterns. Here are your basic choices. You can do a demo or a quiz. You can do my twin brothers scenario, or my snack quiz, or the Blammo. An example of the snack quiz would be, hey, let's see if we're snack compatible. Do you like Pringles or pretzels? Answer honestly. Now, no matter what she answers, you go, damn, okay, it's 2 out of 3. How about this? Little goldfish snacks or Ritz crackers. And basically, the snack quiz just gets her talking about what she likes to snack on. Now, it's not as innocent as you might think, because actually, it's bringing up the topic of indulgence, what she likes to enjoy, what she likes to put into her mouth. See where I'm tracking with it. So you could do a demo or a quiz. You could ask a seduction question. An example of a seduction question would be, when you really want to cut loose, just indulge yourself and enjoy. What do you love to do? Or you could do a traditional memorized pattern. So basically, there are 3 places, 3 different starting positions, if you will. Here are some transition phrases to get into any of this. Any one of these 3 categories can be introduced as follows. You want to see something really cool I learned? I noticed something very interesting about you. Do you know what I think teaches you a lot about people? I watched the most interesting show on TV the other night. I bet I can show you something about yourself that no one else knows. So as you can see, these transition phrases can basically introduce almost anything. I also want to put the perspective out that you should be offering challenges, particularly when you're doing a demo or a quiz. I like these. These are really good. I don't know if you're X enough to really want to learn about yourself. Now, X equals whatever positive qualities you would want to live up to. What are the typical qualities that women nowadays want to think that they lead and that they show in their lives? How about open-minded, adventurous? I don't know if you're open-minded enough to really want to learn about yourself. I don't know if you're adventurous enough to really want to learn about yourself. There's another one. You know, there's something really interesting I'd like to show you about yourself, but not everyone is up to learning new things. Now, what is she going to say? I don't like learning new things. And the other thing I want you to notice is we don't tell her what that something is. We're not going to let her know up front what that something is, so she's going to get curious about it. And again, what is she going to say? No, I don't like to learn about myself. I'm a militant dumbass. I just like to have sex, smoke dope, and listen to bad rock and roll. Even if she is a dumbass, she doesn't want to admit that she's a dumbass. Let me give you a recommended product here. That would be the Gold Walk-Up DVD. Just go to speedseduction.biz/products/walkup.php. Really, it's very simple to get into patterns, to introduce patterns. All you have to do is get your ass out there and do it.
Hey guys, it's RJ with another instructional video module. This is part 1 of 2, where I go into the twin brothers scenario, and this is a scenario you can use right in the beginning of the Sarge or on a sit down on a day 2. And this is from a live presentation I did where I really took it apart and did a thorough analysis. I've broken it into 2 parts because these tend to get really, really large and have tremendous file size. So for rendering and practical purposes, I've broken it down into 2. I think you're really going to enjoy this, so let's get right to it. Hey guys, it's RJ here, and in this instructional video module, I'm going to try things a little bit different. What you're watching here, and let me see if I can make this full screen. So enter full screen. Okay, what you're watching here is some footage from a presentation I did in a live event in San Francisco. And I'm going to go through the Twin Brothers game in great detail here. I'm going to pause it and make some comments as I go. So let's just watch for a little bit. Here comes Tassleberry like clockwork to bother me.
Okay, I like to play games with women. Let's say you do your walk-up, you do your little intro, right? I want to play games with women. So.
And many of you have said, okay, Ross, I have trouble starting patterns once I get talking. Where do I start? And Twin Brothers is a great place to go. So let's see how far we can take this.
I like to play what I call the Twin Brothers game. It goes something like this. So you do your walk-up, you do your opener, and you say something like this. You say, you know what? You look like someone who likes to learn about herself. I say, you look like someone who likes to learn about yourself. Now, what is the purpose of saying that? You look like someone who likes to learn about herself. What woman is going to say, no, I'm a closed-minded dumbass, I don't?
Now this thing, you seem like someone, you look like someone who likes to learn about yourself. This is not only good for the walk-up, but also on your second meeting, anytime you want to introduce something and make sure she's receptive to it. It's part of
That's
setting
a cold read, but it's also setting a frame. What is she going to say? No, I am a dumbass and closed-minded, go away. You look like someone who likes to learn about herself. I learned this cool game. Let's play it. That's how you set it up.
Now see, what you're doing here is also framing it as learning about herself, which is a positive thing for her. It offers, you know, I hate to say offer its value, but that's a valuable thing to learn about yourself. It also is screening her, setting the frame. Is she someone who likes to learn about herself? And finally, you're saying it's fun. All good things.
You understand? With speed seduction, each piece has power in and of itself, but it also sets up the next thing we're going to do. So with speed seduction, each thing we do, by the way, I see people recording it, which is fine, but only for your own use. So with speed seduction, each piece we do has power in itself, but it also sets up the next thing we're going to do. You know, you seem like someone who likes to learn about herself. I learned this really cool game, Let's Play. Now, you don't start with this, you do whatever opener you're going to do, and whatever, but within like 3 minutes I'll do this, okay? It's called the Twin Brothers game. Here we go. Are you ready? So we're setting up that we're playing a game. Why do I like to play a game? Because a game, first of all, has a good connotation. Games are fun. The connotation to playing a game that's fun is not. Also, it sets up her to be an active participant. She has to participate actively.
This is one of the major differences between the newer models of speed seduction and the old models that relied on her just sitting there passively going into trance and giving you doggy dinner bowl. What I like about these kind of games and quizzes is it requires her active participation.
She can't just passively sit there if it's going to be a game, correct? It also starts her complying. To play a game, you have to follow certain rules. So it starts her on the road to complying.
By its very different definition, game requires that you play by rules, which means you must offer compliance, but it's playful compliance. This is the key. I'm aiming at playful compliance at first.
Starts. Notice I said start. Playful compliance. This is what they're leaving out. They're teaching you half-truths. It's playful compliance. It's compliance offered in play and out of curiosity. It's compliance offered in play and out of curiosity, not because you're dominating her and making her do something. Compliance that's offered out of play and out of curiosity to learn something cool is freely given. Compliance that's offered because you're dominating or being semi-threatening or being an asshole is not what I'm talking about. So you're being taught half-truths when you're being taught about compliance. Later, there's a time to get compliance through being dominant, but not in the beginning. So everything at the right time, preceded by the right thing. So
everything in the right time, preceded by the right thing.
Let's play a little game. You can play with me, Diana. You don't have to get up out of your seat, okay? Just give me. Okay. So this is called the Twin Brothers game. You meet twin brothers at a party or a social setting or some place where you feel comfortable meeting someone new. That's the first command. Feel comfortable meeting someone new. Did you hear it? So you meet twin brothers at a party or a social situation or some place where you feel comfortable meeting someone new.
It's really important to remember that among the purposes of playing a game like this is they're a delivery vehicle for embedded commands and suggestions. Keep that in mind.
Now, when I give a command, look what I do at the very end of the command. Look up here. I say, feel comfortable meeting someone new. And I do just a little bit of that. And when I see them do that back, that's the nod of unconscious, they're complying with the unconsciously. You understand? Now, people ask, how do you deliver a command? I say, you're at a party or a club or someplace where you feel, I pause just a little bit, someplace where you feel comfortable. I put that feeling of comfort in my voice. Feel comfortable meeting someone new. I put a little bit of that in there.
So what I'm doing is imagining for myself what it feels like to feel comfortable with someone. See, you can even see it on my face as I smile a little bit. And that slight feeling of comfort, of feeling comfortable with someone, guides my voice, guides my facial expressions. And by the virtue of the fact that we have mirror neurons, where we will mirror someone else's expressions unconsciously and feel what they're feeling, it gets the feeling across.
So that's my first command. One of them, now remember, these twins, they look just like the kind of guy who, when you look at this guy, you feel whatever it is that arises when you know you really want to get with someone.
So look at that. So when you look at this person, you feel whatever it is you feel arising. You feel whatever it is you feel arises. I'm pointing to the crotch, going up the center line of the body, and suggesting that you feel that when you realize you really want to be with someone. So that's a nice little chain of commands. You can see some of the self gestures here.
Okay, I say both of these guys are identical and they both look just like the kind of guy when you look at this guy, you feel whatever it is that arises when you realize you really want to be with this person. Okay? So both of these guys are identical twins. They look just like the kind of guy where Here's the command, guys. Look, I'll go through the language in a minute. You look at this guy, meaning look at me. You look at this guy, and you feel whatever it is that arises. And there I point to the crotch and I move right up.
Now, what I'm visualizing in my mind is I'm visualizing a line of energy starting in her pussy, going all the way up her body, through her chest, through her throat, right into the center of her brain. But it's not really heavy-handed. It's not like I'm dripping with it. Just subtle.
Up through the heart to the head. You feel whatever it is that arises. And I imagine that I'm actually fingering her all the way up energetically up her body. You're laughing. Now guess what? I don't do it like this. Like it's a subtle thing, and you feel whatever it is, and so you look at this guy, and you feel whatever it is you feel arise. When you look at someone and you know you want to be with this person.
These are just examples of
So let's go through the commands. Follow me. I'm going to do it word for word. Look here. Okay. So the pattern is
to really get that the game, whatever game or quiz you're doing, is it a delivery vehicle for embedded commands and suggestions and self-gestures and all that stuff. And to do it with a sense of play will get you so far. You don't even need to complete these things oftentimes with the right kind of girl.
So you need twin brothers, and both of them look exactly the way when you look at a guy and you feel whatever it is you feel arising.
Okay, let me skip a little bit because I'm being a little repetitive here.
Now also, what am I doing when I do this? I'm putting a frame around my face. So she's now going to look at me through those feelings. Bingo. You get it? So you meet someone in a social situation, whatever, you feel comfortable meeting someone new. And these guys are identical twins, so they both look just like the kind of guy where you look at this guy, or you look at this guy, either way will work, and you feel whatever it is you feel arising when you recognize you really want to be with this person.
By now you should be practicing these gestures as you're watching this. I hope you get the point.
You hear it? Recognize you really want to be with this person. You get it? So I'm embedding all these things, okay? Then I said, one of them, play along with me, Diana. I'll give you the pattern later. We'll talk, okay? Just play on. One of them, remember, they're identical, okay? One of them is an incredibly good dancer, but the other one has the most amazing, talented, pleasure-giving hands. Which one do you feel a strong attraction for? Hear that? Feel a strong attraction? Which one do you feel a strong attraction for? Which one? Answer.
The dancer.
Dancer. Okay? So I'm going to develop that response. Now
the second part of doing twin brothers is developing whatever responses she gives you. And this is really, generally speaking, what you're going to do is you're going to get three kinds of responses. You're going to get a strong response with a lot of feeling and a lot of verbalization. She's going to really tell you a lot with her words, and she's also going to display a lot of nonverbal reactions. Second kind of response you're going to get is she'll give you a lot of nonverbal responses, but she won't give you a lot of verbiage. And the third response is she won't respond much at all, in which case you want to go to something else.
I've given her commands, right? Feel the strong. So now, but look at the subject matter. What is the subject matter I'm getting her to talk about? What she feels attracted to other than physical appearance. Because the way we've stated it, they're twins, right? So we've already got the physical appearance out of the way. Now I'm asking her what else she finds attractive in a guy. You understand? So in effect, the question itself is a screen. The question is setting a frame. It's saying, hey, are you just a shallow bitch who only is into a guy's looks? Nothing wrong with that. Or is there something deeper about you? I'm not saying it, it's implied. So it's setting a frame at the same time. So speed seduction does a lot of things simultaneously. We're playing a fun game, we're gathering information about her. By the way, what part of her mind has to turn on and open up to answer these questions?
I hope you see the various different purposes. So now you see we're playing a game that requires her active participation, sets a frame, activates the right part of her mind, opens up the proper theme for conversation, gives us a chance to set anchors, embed commands and suggestions. It's really fucking quite awesome what this one thing does. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Because this takes up a lot of processing power, we'll continue. We're going to split this into 2 modules, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay?
It's the part that
Okay, here we go with part 2. As I said, these take up a lot of processing power, so I really have to split them into segments. So here we go again with me doing Twin Brothers with this girl Diana and continuing with the analysis of it. So let me make this full screen.
thinks about boring guys. No, it's the part of her mind where she experiences attraction for a guy. Is that a good place to open up and turn on?
Yeah.
Fucking better damn well believe it. So, okay. So let's say, it doesn't matter what she answers. Let's say she answers dancer,
Yes.
okay? So I want to develop that response and say, wow, tell me about that. So like when you're with someone who's a really, really good dancer, is it the energy you feel with the person? Is it that they have fantastic technique?
I'm a fan of a guy who's coordinated.
Okay, that may be her answer. Let's make that your answer. So say it.
I'm a fan of a guy who's coordinated.
I'd laugh though. When someone is coordinated, what does that suggest about, how?
Okay, here I'm developing the response by using my is it formula. Is it, so when you're with someone who's a great dancer, is it A, B, is it B, or is it C? I'm listening to possible categories of what she finds most interesting or attractive about that. Case of a dancer, is it the energy that you feel exchanging and flowing between you and this great dancer? Is it the fact that you enjoy how good someone makes you look when they know how to dance and you're with them? Or is it that when you think about the fact that they know how to move their body as a dancer, you get some ideas about, something else? So I don't even remember her response here.
Never mind. I'd kill it. I'd say, never mind. I don't want to know. That's a dirty thought. But now I know, I have her thinking about it. Do you understand? Usually you'll hear, she'll say dancer or she'll say hands. If she says dancer, I'll say, you know what? I had a friend who was really into guys who could dance well because she said, it's either you can tell they've got great technique or you really like the energy, or it's the way you feel when you move with them that you really enjoy.
Those are all really good. So I even forgot my response in this moment here until I watched the video. But that's really good. Let's go back and watch that again. I love instant replay, don't you?
So when someone is coordinated, what does that suggest about, how they are? Never mind. I'd kill it. I'd say, never mind. I don't want to know. That's a dirty thought. But now I know, I have her thinking about it. Do you understand? Usually you'll hear, she'll say dancer or she'll say hands. If she says dancer, I'll say, you know what? I had a friend who was really into guys who could dance well because she said, it's either you can tell they've got great technique or you really like the energy, or it's the way you feel when you move with them that you really enjoy.
I think that's the most suggestive. The way you feel when you move with them that you really enjoy.
And I'll watch to see what her answer is. She says, yeah, it's the energy. I'll go, that's really cool, isn't it? I'm anchoring the response. Let's say she says hands.
I simply anchor the response by tapping.
I'll say, yeah, I agree with you. When I'm with someone, and I'm with them in a way where you feel you really want more with this person, it's really important.
Did you catch that? I said, when I'm with someone, and I'm with them in a way where you feel you really want more with this person. I'm doing what I call the IU shift. I started about talking about myself, and then I shifted to her. So I say, when I'm with someone, and I'm with them in a way where I feel you want something more with this person.
To know that they can touch me in a way you really want to be touched. So I start talking about myself, and then I turn it into talking about her. So I'll say, yeah, I agree. Having good hands is so important. When I'm with someone and I'm with them in a way where you realize you want more. So I'll start by talking about me. I'll say, when I'm with someone and I'm with them in a way where I realize you want more. I'll say, when I'm with someone and I'm with them in a way where I realize you want more, I'm now giving them the suggestion that they want more. It creates a little bit of a confusion. I call it the I.
Now, you don't even have to do this. Seriously, this is not required. It's icing on the cake, but it's fun to watch the trances continue to build as you do it.
You shift. So it goes like this. When I'm with someone and I'm with them in a way where I realize you want more, and I'll put a little bit of a sexual intent in there. It's really important that they touch me in the way you really want to be touched. But once you get it, it's easy.
Let me skip forward a bit.
You hear that? Feel an even stronger attraction now. Tell me, which one do you feel an even stronger attraction now? It's not even the grammatically correct sense would be, which one do you feel an even stronger attraction for now? Which one do you feel an even stronger attraction now? Tell me. So, okay, one of them is a fantastic kisser, the other is funny as hell. Give me your answer. I don't care which it is. Kisser. I agree. You know, I'll tell you why. I had this friend, I don't know about you, but she told me,
let me stop for a minute, because we did not develop this response here in this video, but let's say she says hands. I'll say, yeah, you know, I think it's so important when I'm with someone who touches me in the way you really want to be touched, to know that this touch is really there for you. I would add quotes. I'd say, you know, I had a friend in high school, and he claimed that he really could get a lot of women to like him just by touching him like right there. Okay, and then you do what you do to her what you narrate, as you narrate what your friend said he used to do.
I wasn't quite sure whether she really liked that guy, but then there comes that moment where you stop talking, and there's that first like electric brush of the lips, and she said you could feel a flood of like. She said she could feel a flood of liking this guy come all through you.
Feel a flood of liking this guy come all through you? What am I doing there? I'm quoting someone else talking about what it's like to anticipate that first kiss.
She said she could feel a flood of, hear the command, feel a flood of liking this guy
really
come all through you. Now, do I mean to editorial you? I mean talking about people or talking about her? You get it? And I like, no. And by the way, if she's looking at me like this and she's ready, that's when I lean in and kiss her. If I see the readiness, I don't go on to the next pattern. I'll go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Ooh, this is moving too fast. Let's get back to the game. You understand? Let's say she doesn't say kiss her. Let's say she says laughter. Oh, I'll say, you know what? You are so right.
Watch this one. This is evil.
I had a girlfriend who was so funny. She would make me laugh so hard inside you. Just fall to the floor and feel all the barriers melting because it just feels so good down there on the floor. Anyway.
Feel all the barriers melting because it just feels so good down there on the floor. Do you hear this kind of sexual metaphor creeping in there? So, yeah, I had a girl who would make me laugh so hard inside you, just fall down the floor and just feel all your barriers drop away because it feels so good down there. Does that mean down there in the pussy? It feels so good down there on the floor. Or does it mean it feels so good to be fucking down there on the floor? Or does it mean to feel so good down there on the floor from all the laughter? Well, given the right context, the unconscious searches for all meanings. So I think you can see as the pattern progresses, I start layering in more sexual intent, more sexual metaphor, more sexual suggestion. And I anchor it by tapping or by biting my lip with a facial expression. Then that's there for you. Fire it off during the rest of the evening and say, I'm having a great time with you. Then lean in and kiss her. Get it? If she's not hot enough to lean in and kiss during this, get all the anchors set. And then later on, you know, as you get a little closer to her, say, I'm having the best time with you. I can feel there might be a feeling here. You get it? I'm leaning on it so you see it.
Get it? You hear what I'm saying? Feel all the barriers melting? She would make me laugh so hard so hard inside you. And what am I picturing when I say that? I'm picturing my big hard cock inside that girl I'm talking to. So she would make me laugh so hard inside you. Would just fall down laughing. See, look, it went in. See? It went in. Now you can't get it out again.
You couldn't see her. She didn't want to be on camera, but she was having a very strong blushing response.
The more you try, the deeper it goes. It gets lost in there. The more you try to fight it, the bigger it gets, the more you want to receive it. And sorry. Okay? I'm going real fast, but I want you to hear it, okay? Just get the potential. You don't even need to do all this. Do 1/3 of it. And with the right kind of girl, with a girl who's horny and likes to fuck and is suggestible, which is about 30% of them, you're going to get laid.
This is my point. With something, so many are so concerned that you get every word right. Once you get the basics down, you can fit anything, any of these basics through virtually any kind of format or presentation you do with a girl. Creating a playful compliance, setting the frame, opening the right place in her mind, using her responses, feeding her responses back, using command suggestions, anchoring. It's all there. Using your own state as part of setting the anchor, feeling a little bit of what you want her to feel, visualizing a little bit of what you want her to visualize. This is the essence of speed seduction. Whether you use it in this kind of format or a different kind of format, this is it. So I hope you've really enjoyed this analysis. Hey guys, it's Ross Jeffries with a fun, well they're all fun, but this is a particularly fun instructional video module for November 2009. Many people say to me that they want to be able to generate their own patterns. How do they create their own language patterns? And so what you're about to see is a video clip from one of my seminars in London. I think we actually shot this in 2007. No, we shot this in 2008, and I didn't like the quality of the sound. You'll notice a faint background buzz, a hum that was being caused by the wireless mic we were using on that particular day. So I never released the footage. I actually have about 18 hours of original footage from this seminar that I never released and has never been shown. But at this point in the seminar, someone said, can you really create a pattern out of nothing? And I said, sure. Here's a challenge, class. You throw out a subject, I'll create a seduction language pattern based on that subject. So someone threw out the subject of nanotechnology. So in a moment, you're going to see that video clip and see how I spin a language pattern with sexual metaphor based apparently on nanotechnology. Some things to bear in mind. One way to practice the process is to select silly content. Sometimes we get so caught up in the content, fascination, attraction, connection. And these are important things to be able to discuss with women, but sometimes we get so caught up in the content that we lose the process. What is the process for creating patterns, you see? So I did this on the fly. And here's how I did it, very quickly on my feet. I thought to myself, okay, what are the metaphors for nanotech? What do I know about nanotechnology? For those of you who don't know, nanotechnology is the science of creating things. Here comes my cat, Tabitha. Of creating things on a very small scale, of bioengineering devices, like little tall, sized devices that can go into the bloodstream and look for tumors and destroy them. It's building engines or useful devices. Tabitha, stop it. Using biochemical processes on the atomic level. It's very useful, very powerful. Tabitha, you see I got a little life here. You can't control cats. You can influence women, but when it comes to cats, they're going to do what they want. Tabitha, go away and I'll give you a treat. Okay, so what I did is I said Tabitha is pushing the screen down. Tabitha, go outside and play. Okay? Shoo, kitty. So I took the metaphors for nanotechnology. Size. Nanotech talks about taking things that are big and making them very small. And nanotech is useful for taking things that normally are too large and making them small enough to enter, etc., etc. So I took all the metaphors that I knew, all the jargon for nanotech, and I said, how does this match sexual metaphor? I did this on the fly because this is how I think. And then I combined it with gestures. So that said, it really is about enjoying the process. So let's watch this video together.
Nanotechnology? You know, the thing about nanotechnology is sometimes in life we aim for something really big, but then sometimes it's not about what's really big, it's about what can enter real easily. Because, you know, the thing with nanotechnology is often when you want to introduce something into the body that can be really helpful, the problem is, even though it's great, it's just too big to go in. So with nanotechnology, they shrink things down to a little tiny, so small, so infinitesimally tiny, that it's like there's no longer a barrier there at all, because nothing can stop this. And wait, and when it does go in, it goes everywhere.
Because there's so many small particles.
No, don't build on the Mona Lisa. All right, you get it? Are you following? So,
Hey guys, it's Ross Jeffries, and I want to welcome you once again to another Answers to Students module for January 2009, and this is for Lucky. I didn't misspell it. That's how he spells his name, L-U-K-Y. This is going to be a very interesting one, so let's get going. I think they're all interesting. Remember again, my aim as a teacher here is not to read from the slides. The slides are here as a supplemental tool for your learning. Very interesting email, very interesting post. And this is a technical question that he's asking about the execution, the proper operation, the proper use of speed seduction. Specifically, doing elaborate descriptions when you're doing speed seduction language patterning. Many of you know that a pattern can be, isn't always, but sometimes a pattern is a long, descriptive set of language constructs, and through the descriptions we embed commands and we lead a woman's emotions. So basically his email wants to know, how are the masterful students, the students who are really good at this, and myself, the creator of it, how are we so good at elaborating the descriptions that we give in patterns? He was reading a post from Chef, who's one of the coaching club members here, and he's wondering, how does Chef come up with these elaborate descriptions that are so evocative of the emotions? And then he goes on to say that he's got one pattern under his belt. That's fine, but he can't live with just one. So how does he learn to take any topic that's discussed and lead it into something that's loaded with speed seduction language? Great question. I like these kind of technical questions. Excuse me. So let's get to my answers, shall we? Let's talk about elaborating descriptions. And before we do, let's talk about what constitutes some of the rules for a good pattern. How do you know that you're coming up with a good pattern? Well, first of all, a really good pattern reaches from your own experience, if possible, as a starting point. If you're passionate about downhill skiing, and you know what downhill skiing feels like in your body, and you know what it brings to your life to have those feelings, then you're more likely to do a really great pattern on downhill skiing. Now, you can then weave sexual metaphor into downhill skiing. I'm not a downhill skier. You couldn't get me on skis if the entire UCLA women's volleyball were waiting at the bottom of the slope to warm me up in the lodge. I just don't want to get on skis. But if I had a passion for skiing, I could take the physical description, feeling the excitement. You feel your breath come faster. And I could weave it in with sexual metaphor. And then as you begin to go down faster and faster, and you know this ride is so exciting, the most exciting. You see what I'm saying? So I would weave sexual metaphor in there. But you want to be able to have something from your own experience, preferably. Not necessary, but preferably. Second, remember, as I keep emphasizing, repetition could be the mother of skill, or it could be the creator of boredom. In my case, it's the mother of skill. Patterns are vehicles for embedded commands and suggestions. So you want to make sure that you have certain embedded commands and suggestions ready to go. You want to use sensory-rich descriptions. What do I mean by sensory-rich descriptions? Well, you don't want to just say, I went down the ski slope and it was quick. No, you want to appeal to the senses. What did it feel like in your body? What was the temperature? What did it look like? What color was the snow? What were the sounds? You understand? So it's not, I rode down the hill and it was nice. No, no. And I could feel the freezing, the cool air caressing my face. The crunch of the snows against my ski mixed with the feel of the adrenaline as you realize something's going to happen, Debbie. See, sensory descriptions. And then preferably you want her to have started talking first so you can feed her own trance words back. Let's say you say, is there something you do that's really exciting for you, Debbie? And she describes it. And you hear that her trance words are excitement, build up, letting loose. Excitement, build up, letting loose. You're going to weave those back into your description, your pattern. This should make sense, okay? Now here's a gold key understanding. Don't you like, I love this corny, I'm torturing you guys with this gold color, I like it. Gold key understanding. If you open up your richness of perception and experience, that will open up your richness of expression. Yes, I absolutely want you to work on your richness of expression, but a big part of that is opening up your richness of perception and experience. So that way you have a fund of things to draw upon. Now what's the trite advice? The advice you hear from everyone, the advice you hear from the knuckle-headed gurus. Well, it's not wrong advice, it's just kind of trite and common and incomplete. The trite, common, and complete advice is try new experiences, new places, new activities. Well, duh, okay? If you've never tried French food, go try French food. Or if you've never tried skydiving, give it a shot. Go sign up to support the local zoo so you can get behind the scenes when they feed the tigers. You know, blah, 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 blah. Nothing wrong with that advice, but anyone can give you that advice. That's not why you pay Ross the big bucks. Here's a better idea. Develop a way to draw maximum experience from ordinary things. In other words, develop a way to so open up your perception and your senses that ordinary things can be experienced in an extraordinary way. So when you can bring extraordinary focus and permission to ordinary things, the ordinary, paradoxically, becomes extraordinary. You know, they say that to the sage, to the mystic, the enlightened person, he sees the piece of shit in the same way he sees the diamond. Now, that's not the same as saying that he sees them as being the same thing. No, it means the way in which he sees the piece of shit, the way in which he processes the piece of shit with his senses is the same way he sees the diamond with his senses, with full attention, full awareness, not hanging on to any of it and not letting any of it congeal either. See? So when you can bring extraordinary focus, awareness, and insight into the ordinary, then paradoxically the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. The best way I can urge you to do this is through a Vipassana practice. Now, my best resource for this is my teacher, Shinzen Young. Shinzen is to meditation what I am to NLP, what Einstein was to physics. How's that for arrogance? Putting myself in that company. But I strongly suggest check out his website. It's shinzen.org. Now here's a totally different angle. Let me approach this from a different angle. I want to talk about this idea of immersion. I was hanging out with my friend Professor B, and Professor B is engaged to a lovely Brazilian girl. She's only been in the country 10 months, and she just started learning English when she came to the country, basically. But already, she's pretty functional in English. She's from Brazil, so her native tongue is Portuguese, and she's never studied any English at all while she lived in Brazil. But she's already quite good. Her English is heavily accented, and some grammatical things are incorrect, but she's pretty damn good. And for 9-10 months, it's extraordinary. So I said, Lou, how do you do this? And she says, well, I talk to people everywhere. I talk to people in the bus, I talk to people in the stores, I talk to everyone all the time. So she's immersed herself. And I want you to get this idea of immersion. And to get the real flow and rhythm of a good pattern, you're going to have to immerse yourself. Not study. Don't study speed seduction. Immerse yourself. So immersion means, like Lou, across multiple contexts. So Lou doesn't just talk to women or men or people in grocery stores. She's practicing her English everywhere. Second, I want you to use multiple modalities. What does that mean? That means you're not just going to speak the patterns, but you're also going to write them out by hand. I want you to take a couple of the classic patterns from the courses and write them out by hand. Write them out by hand, each one 3 times. I guarantee you by the 3rd time you'll be a little sick of it, but you will have gotten what the flow of a good pattern feels like kinesthetically. And then of course you want to use the modality of speaking it. You want to speak it out loud. But one of the things I want to give you is a little clue, this is a little hint, is when you speak it out loud, don't make the full range of movements you would make when you're actually speaking. So if when you're actually speaking, you do this, just make a micro movement. Just make a tiny little bit of the movement of your arm that you would make if you were actually doing the talk. There's something about making micro movements rather than the full movements that embeds things into your consciousness. So try it when you're rehearsing it out loud, doing micro movements, and then when you try it again, do the full movements, and just see one may work better than the other. And as well, you wanted to listen to the pattern language. I had a student who bought 3 CD players, including one that was waterproof that he put in his shower. And anywhere you would go in his apartment, at any room, at any time of day or night, you would hear me talking, doing patterns. It's full immersion, full-on immersion. And finally, it really helps to get the form as well as the content. What do I mean by that? What do I mean getting the form as well as the content? Well, let's go to the next slide and you'll see. I want you to do a nonsense content drill. Here's what I want you to do. You pick your favorite pattern, blowjob, discovery, I don't care. I want you to keep the form intact, but put in nonsense content. So the example here on the slide, what's it like when you experience Sappho-Nickel Beeble-fucks? You know that first amazing snorforker? And you imagine the Zemluscus working its way up your noxanon. So now you're probably laughing as you hear it, but the fact of the matter is if you put in nonsense content, it forces you to focus on the proper form and the proper feel and the proper rhythm rather than being over-focused on the content. So yes, part of the study and the immersion is getting the content, but part of your immersion is putting in nonsense content and getting the form. I'm wondering if that makes sense. Now here's another drill, even sillier but just as useful. A negative content drill. What do I mean by negative content drill? I mean content that creates negative responses, responses that you don't want. I don't want you to actually do this on anyone, but I do want you to practice creating them. So come up with a nausea pattern, just for fun. You know, I was watching this show the other night on the Discovery Channel about disease, when you just feel sick, Debbie. And they said at first, it's like when you ever get up too fast in the morning and you feel that kind of wooziness in your head. And then as you focus in on that sickening feeling in your stomach, you get it, guys? I don't want to do this to you. Wipe that out. All suggestions canceled. Get my point? So we have a variety, a range of suggestions here. I've gone over for you what makes for a good pattern. I've suggested how you can increase the storehouse of what you have to talk about by increasing the richness of your own experience. Not just in terms of doing new and interesting things, but opening up the possibility of bringing extraordinary perception and focus and awareness into the ordinary. I've talked about nonsense content and negative content drills. Will you do me a favor? Please give this a shot. Give me your comment on the discussion board in the coaching area. And I want your feedback. Let me know how this worked for you. I enjoyed these questions. Thank you. I love my job.
Hi, it's Ross Jeffries with another instructional video module for December 2009 for the Elite Coaching Club. This is about using seduction questions, and you'll notice this says part 1. I'm going to make this an ongoing series. Since there's so much to teach and to say about this topic, and since using seduction questions is one of my favorite things to do, I want to make sure that we don't overwhelm you and that we pace this out in the right way. So let's get going. Remember, a seduction question is an example of a format. A format is basically the structure through which you conduct your speed seduction languaging. There are many different formats. Now, why is it important to be familiar with formats? Well, one of the things I've noticed in my long, see this gray hair and these wrinkles, long seduction career is that some women happen to be more responsive to some kinds of formats. Some women will just respond better to being asked questions than they will, say, playing a game or being shown a demo. So it's important to be well versed in at least 3 or 4 of the more common, more powerful formats. What I've done here is to list the most common ones: jokes, stories, poems, games, quizzes, demos, formal patterns like the blowjob pattern, Discovery Channel, Incredible Connection, questions. These are all, you'll see me using all or some of these in my seductions depending on how I see women responding. So remember this key speed seduction users rule. This is really powerful and very important. I've been saying this since the early 90s. If you want to get good at using a tool, it's very important to know the purpose of the tool. What is the tool designed to do? On a simple level, if you just memorize the movement, that's one thing. But if you understand what the tool is designed to do, then your application is going to be much more powerful. So let's ask, what are questions useful for?
Well, a question can be used to introduce a theme or topic. And once that theme or topic is introduced, then you can go anywhere with it. You can use any of the formats. A question can be used to establish a frame, get her qualifying herself. If, for example, and this is not the question we'll be examining in this module, but if your question is, if you could name 3 things about yourself that are uniquely attractive, that would make a person you feel an amazing connection to, want to keep coming back for more, what would those 3 things be? See, so you can do it like that. But you can establish a frame. And of course, anytime I use any of the formats, no matter what they are, I'm going to use the opportunity to embed commands and suggestions. Remember this, commands and suggestions are the workhorses of speed seduction. And you can say commands and suggestions are the workhorses of speed seduction, and the formats are like the Trojan horses of speed seduction. You get it? Questions can also be used to set up or introduce or prepare her for a formal pattern. For example, Discovery Channel. Like, do you like to do something, when you really want to do something totally crazy and really adventurous that maybe has a little element of danger, what do you love to do? And then you can listen to her answer, but then talk about, well, I was watching this show on the Discovery Channel, so you can use it to introduce a more formal pattern. Questions will also energize the right level of her mind, depending on the type of question. If you ask a question about escape, adventure, indulgence, it's likely to energize that part of her mind. You can also use it to screen her and gather useful information. Well, useful information about what? Well, let me get to this in a second, but useful information about what? Well, how does she respond? What are her nonverbal responses? What are her verbal responses? Does she give you trance words? So let me give you an example of a seduction question that I've been playing with lately. I'll call it a focus question. The focus question goes like this. When you really want to do something that requires you to focus in, give all your attention, to do something that just feels amazing, what do you love to do? Now, you can see the commands here in blue. Focus in, give all your attention. So right there, I'm already starting with embedding commands. So what are we accomplishing here? We're embedding commands. We're introducing the theme of enjoying yourself with deep focus and absorption. Now, why would that be important? To get a woman thinking about enjoying herself with deep focus and absorption. You may not get to a sexual response right away, but using the metaphor of an apartment building, right? You have an apartment here and it's really, really noisy. It's likely to wake up the occupants in the apartment next door. So if you think of women's minds as being compartmentalized, which is one of the key teachings of speed seduction, then we can realize that if the compartment where she thinks about escape, indulgence, focus, fantasy, it may not overlap completely with the compartment where she's thinking about sex. It may have a lot of overlap, and there may be just a very thin doorway between the 2 rooms. Have you ever gone to a hotel and seen that they have like a little locked door in between the 2 rooms so the maid can get through? Something like that. It's going to open up the part of her mind that thinks about these things. And then we're testing for responsiveness. Both right as we ask the question, in the moment we ask the question, watching to see does she go into trance as we give the embedded commands, and then in terms of the answer she gives us. And also remember, we're screening. Screening is really important. What am I screening for? Well, first of all, I'm screening to see what kind of format she responds to. If I deliver it right and set it up right and she still doesn't respond, then chances are either that theme or that format just doesn't strike her. So I need to back up. And also, if she tells us a lot about what she loves to do, that's useful information. We also can see, does she need to be lubricated, or does she offer information about herself freely, her degree of initial openness without having to be prodded? Now, with a question like this, I'll do a follow-up question. I'll say, wow, that's amazing. Tell me, once she gives me her answer, like, oh, I love to ski, and I go down, and I blah, 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 I'll say, really? What's your favorite part of that? And as she starts to answer, I'll say, wait a minute. Take me with you. So we're on the slope together, or we're diving down together. Incorporate whatever she says. Obviously, if she says jumping out of airplanes, you're not going to say, okay, we're on the slope together. You get it? And what you'll find when you get good at this is it becomes very easy to incorporate sexual metaphor as you feed back her answers to her. You know, going down the slope and I'm screaming with excitement. I feel the powder underneath my feet. There's a rush and you let this hill take you. You understand? She's almost going to be feeding you sexual metaphor as she describes it if you ask it right. So it becomes very easy to sexualize this in so many ways, without even asking an overtly sexual question in the beginning. Here's some other hints to make this kind of question work. I like to soften it. Now, you don't always have to do that, but softeners help. I'll say something like, I find, you know, as we're sitting here just beginning to find out about each other, I love to learn about people who I'm getting to know, and I find you learn so much about people by learning where they find those focus. Those things, those moments that really call to give all your attention in a way where you just feel things flow. So if I were to ask you, or if you don't mind my asking, I actually like if I were to ask you. That's a weasel phrase that sets up you asking anything. You get it? And this theme of learning about people, I should do something about Ross's favorite themes. I love this theme of learning about people because learning about people, learning has a very positive connotation in our culture. To say, no, I don't want to learn is to be marked out as a very undesirable, stupid person. Who's going to say, no, I don't like to learn about people? No one. So learning about people also, it's so broad. It enables you to introduce anything, right? I think it's so interesting. You learn so much about people by learning how their vagina takes in a huge dildo. Now, I wouldn't introduce that one, but you can see it gives you tremendous conversational flexibility. It's one of my favorite themes. So I like to set up this kind of seduction question that I just asked by prefacing it like, hey, we're just getting to know each other and learning about each other, and you learn so much about people by learning how they X. See how that works? Much more on seduction questions. How many future modules we'll cover using the signal recognition question and questions that deal with more overtly sexual themes and topics. Do let me know how you enjoyed this. Give me your feedback in the members.
Hi guys, it's Ross Jeffries. Well, I'm here bringing you yet another Answers to Students video module for 2009. This is for a guy who calls himself Fading World. I don't know about that nickname, and I'm here with my lovely cat Tabitha is sleeping, taking a nap in the background, so hopefully she'll leave us alone so we can talk together, mischief makers. This is going to be a real good one. I love my job. Okay, here's his email, his post, and you can go through this in detail. It's kind of small print. Basically what he's saying is that he understands speed seduction, but he's not consistent applying it, and what happens is that he often runs out of things to say. And in between patterns, he's not quite sure what to say. Basically, he's saying he has trouble conversing normally with anyone, never mind women. He goes on to state he has no idea exactly what to talk about. He just hasn't yet learned to converse. And one of the things he says that's really interesting is, quote, I'm not shy or introverted particularly, which I really like. So he's not attributing it to his identity. He quite properly sees that it's a skill set he needs to acquire. So he asks a great question. I like this guy. What can I do to improve my conversational skill and remove my stuckness on this topic? I really like it. You see, not why, but he's asking what. What can I do to improve my conversational skill and remove my stuckness? So he doesn't make it about his identity or his destiny. He sees that it's a skill, and rather than dig into why he's this way, he wants to know what he can do to get his outcome, which is great. I hold out great hope of success for this gentleman. So whenever someone brings a challenge or situation to me, I always ask, where's the leverage? You know what a lever is? A lever is like something you use with a fulcrum to move a heavy object that you normally could not move directly. And so as I say here, as I said before, he's in a good way because he doesn't see it as something about him. It's not about his identity. So I ask myself, when I look at students, I say, is there anything interfering that needs to be quieted or turned down or de-emphasized? First and foremost, is there anything he's doing maybe unconsciously that's getting in his way? Is he busy thinking in his head, what do these people think of me? What if they don't like me? That whole parasitic program will get in anybody's way. Now, I don't think that's the case with him. I haven't spoken to him. I would like you, if you, as you're watching this, consider getting on one of the twice monthly coaching calls because I'd like to be able to talk to you, or take advantage of the office hours. Get on the mega meeting part where we can see each other because I'd like to talk to you further about this fading world.
But it doesn't appear to me that that's the case with you, but I do want to be thorough and ask. If it is, let me know in the bulletin board as you respond to this. Here's my suggestions. First of all, what if this wasn't about what you talk about, running out of things to say, but rather what you can get curious about? In other words, rather than that you're running out of things to say, maybe you just haven't yet learned how to get curious. Maybe you're running out of things to notice and get interested about and get curious about. So begin, since you're really good with questions, Fading World, ask these. What can you notice about the other person, or persons, because it may be more than one? What can you notice that you can use to create a connection or deepen a conversation? What can you notice? What can you get curious about? In other words, what are all the different ways in which you can get curious about the other people around you in a way that leads you to get them to do most of the talking? See, the presupposition of your question is it's about you, first of all, running out of things to say, which presupposes you should be doing the same. I think it's about what you can notice and ask about that will get them to do most of the talking. Does that make sense? It's a different way of looking at the problem. Most of the time, 70 to 80% of the time when students present a problem to me, it's not really the problem. It's that they're focusing on something that just isn't getting them the result. And focusing on doing that something better or more effectively isn't what they need to be doing, usually, not all the time. So here's some things you could get curious about. You could get curious about something they're doing, their ongoing behavior, right? Maybe they're painting, maybe they're singing, maybe they're twiddling their thumbs. I don't know. You can get curious about something they're observing. Are they watching something that you also are watching in the environment? Are you both watching a dog walk down the street or a couple have a fight? Are you watching someone spill the drinks as he's making the espresso at Starbucks? I don't know. Is there something going on that you can both observe? And this ties in almost exactly and identically with something going on in the context that you're sharing. Is there something going on that you can both look at or comment upon? You can also comment upon the social dynamic that you intuit. Let me tell you a little story, and this was not in the notes when I prepared this presentation, but it occurs to me now as a teacher, so I'm going to tell it to you. About 3 years ago when I was in London, I go to London at least every year, and we'll probably go again in June 2009 to teach. But I was there a couple of years back. I was on the subway, the underground, and there were a bunch of students. They looked like students. They got on the subway, about 5 of them, and they appeared to be Eastern Indian or Pakistani in extraction. And they began talking. Now, I didn't understand a word that they were saying. So my normal filters when I observe a conversation where I do understand the language is, number one, are they expressing it intelligently? Is this intelligently expressed, and do I agree or disagree? But because I couldn't understand what was being said, that normal way of looking at things had to drop. There's no way I could filter that because I couldn't understand it. So instead, rather than focusing on whether I agreed with the presentation, I began to focus on the social dynamic of what was going on. I began to observe, and I thought, okay, who's in charge of this conversation? Who's the person who's really leading the whole thing? I began to observe that, and I thought, okay, how's the group dividing? And it felt to me like 2 of them believed one way, and 1 of them believed the other way. And then the guy in the middle who was leading the conversation believed the way the one guy did, and he was convincing the other 3. And I got the felt sense at the end of it, he convinced 2 out of the 3. So by the time I had made my observations, I said, can I ask you guys a question? Do you speak English? So they said, yes. I said, what were you speaking? Urdu, Pushtan? And they told me Urdu, I think. I said, I have to ask you, it appears to me that you, sir, were the leader of the whole conversation. You're some kind of teacher or professor, and these are all people who don't have quite your level of learning. This guy came in holding your opinion. These 3 didn't, but by the end you convinced these 2. And they all looked at me completely gobsmacked, like, that's absolutely right. How did I do that? Point being that sometimes, even if you don't understand what people are saying, you can still get curious about the social dynamic between them. Who's leading who? Who's along for the ride? This is really good. When you observe people in the social setting, who's there and who's having fun? Who's there actually having fun? Who's there hoping to have fun, but they're not quite there yet? And who's there just along for the ride? They don't even want to be there. These are some other things you can observe about people's attitude towards the situation that they're in. These are really great things to get curious about. You know what? I am so happy about this coaching program. It really calls on me to teach, and I love it. I come up with such great stuff. This is fantastic material. I love it. Sorry, I love teaching. Here's my 4C theory. This is really good. It also makes a great language pattern for those of you who want to try it out as a pattern. But it's more about you, Fading World, to learn about things you can get curious about. I have a theory about people that deals with 4 C's. The first C is, what are they constructing? This is how you can understand a person's world, get a felt sense for them. If you're an actor doing a character study, you can create your character based on these 4 C's. And I came up with this all on my own. First C is, what are they constructing? What is the goal that they're working on or towards in their life? There's always something that most people are working towards. They're working towards finding that great relationship, or they're working on finishing their PhD, or they're working on rebuilding that car. What is it that they're constructing, that they're working towards, that they're putting their focused effort towards? So you can get curious about that. The second C is their sense of contribution. Where do they get their sense or their feeling that they're contributing to something greater than themselves? Now, some people don't have this, in which case that's a clue about the quality of the person and the depth of the person that you're dealing with. For me, obviously, my sense of contribution is what I'm doing right now. So where do they get their sense that they're contributing to something greater than their own desires and needs? Third C is their sense of connection. Where do they find their sense of connecting to others? Or maybe they're not connecting to others, but connecting into the mysterious, to a sense of higher purpose. But usually connecting with others. We need that connection. And the fourth C is their cravings. What is it they crave in their life? How do they relate to and indulge in the things that they indulge in, that they probably shouldn't do, but they really want to do? Where do they find their cravings? Now, every person is going to differ, and at different points of their day and different points of their life, they're going to put emphasis on one of these more than the other, and in different contexts more than the other. But this is a way to get really curious about people, to build a map in your mind about how they work, and to learn what you can observe, what you can ask about. And even asking people about these things creates tremendous respect for you, because you're showing a level of understanding and interest in them that no one else ever has before. It's really cool stuff. And of course, in each one of these, there's endless opportunities to embed commands and spin patterns. Now, I'm going to talk about, finally, giving you some ways to design a state that really works for you. Because I don't know what your state is like. Perhaps designing a better state could work. So we're going to be doing this. I want you to watch this video, and then you're going to have to go do this in a separate way, a separate place. This involves something in NLP called spatial anchoring. Spatial anchoring simply means you mark out a place on the stage or on the floor, and every time you walk into that place, you're going to carry with you and create a certain state of consciousness. And then when you step out of it and step back in it, again, each time you step back into that space, it helps you to anchor in those feelings into your body and into your mind. So first, here's 3 states that I think when you combine together would be ideal for you. You may not agree, you may want to try different elements, but I would say these states are curious. So you're curious, you're excited and open. You ever been excited and open for a new experience, willing to let a new experience come on? And then finally, you're relaxed. You're grounded, alert, relaxed state, a relaxed, grounded alertness. Not panic alertness, like when you almost get in a car accident, but relaxed, grounded alertness. These are the 3 states I'd like to assist you in working with today. Okay? So here's what you're going to do. Ignore that little typo. You're going to be physically creating a space on the floor to step into for each state. So make sure you get some floor space. So I want you to pick a spot on the floor for the curious state. So what I do is actually I draw. I don't know if you can see my hand in the video. I'll draw like this on the floor just with my finger and imagine the circle there. What I want you to do is begin to generate the feelings in your body of what it feels like when you're really curious about something. You can even close your eyes for this and tune in to where you feel it in your body when you feel curious. Maybe it's just in your face, I don't know. And when you're really feeling those feelings, I want you to step into that spot you marked on the floor. You can open your eyes to do it if you need to. Step into the spot. Now as you're in the spot, I want you to feel those feelings in your body. And here's a key. I want you to make some very small micro movements of your body that represent for you being in that state. Here's what I mean by micro movements. Here's a gross movement. A micro movement would be like if you're going to imagine that you're going to move your hand. Imagine for a minute that you're going to move your hand like this, but instead of moving your hand like that, you just get a little bit of the muscle movement you'd make if you were to move your hand like that. You understand? You ever be laying in bed and you're really sleepy, but you want to get a drink of water, and you sort of back and forth between actually willing your legs to move and staying in bed? You don't quite send the signal to move your legs, but you can feel a little bit of it. That's what I mean by a micro movement. So come up with some very small micro movement of the body that represents your being in that state. Then what you're going to do is you're going to step out of that space, and you're going to take a full minute to get back to neutral state. Then you're going to create the next state. So that's an open, excited state of being open to new experience. And you're going to repeat the same process. Step in, get the feelings, step in, feel the feelings, do the micro movement. Step out again, create another neutral state, and repeat the process for the third state. Here's how you wire it all in. Now you're going to face the first space, and you're going to turn around. So you're now got your back to the space, and you're going to rapidly step backwards into it. Understand? So you're facing the space, you're going to turn around, and now your back is to it. You're going to rapidly step backwards into it. And as you step backwards into it, close your eyes, take on the feelings again, make the micro movements again. Step out, walk over to the second space, face that, turn around, rapidly step backwards into that. Make the micro movements for that state, feel the feelings. Do the same thing for the third space. That's how you wire all of that into your body. Now here's what I want you to do. I want you to prepare your state like this for the next 3 to 5 times you go out to meet people. After that, you won't have to do it anymore. Maybe in a few months, if you feel it slipping, rewire it in. So here's some hints. Get out in the real world. Make sure that the ratio of action to preparation is a good one. If you're in your head a lot, you want to make sure, even if things serve you being in your head, don't do too much of it. And here's a final little clue. If you feel stuck, don't hide it. Confess it. Be honest. Unveil yourself to people, and you'll be surprised at how kind and receiving they become. You disarm them. So if you're stuck, you can say, tell the truth. I'm really determined to get better in welcoming people, to get better at my people skills. So I'm trying out being more friendly and open. And in this case, I've just run out of things to say. And you'll find if you're vulnerable like that, without being whiny about it, just flat out, no shit, vulnerable, people, the right kind of people, almost all people, will be very accepting of you. So try this all out. I know I gave you a lot to think about, and I want your comments in the discussion board area. Thanks. Hi, it's Ross Jeffries, and welcome to another Answers to Students module for December 2008. You're really going to like this one. There's some really sneaky, clever, wicked, powerful, hypnotic stuff in here that you're really going to enjoy. So let's get right to it. Essentially, this guy, E.L., is asking about the use of poetry. He wants to know when to use poems. Are there any poems that are guaranteed home runs? When did he use them? How does he bring them up? How can he tell if a woman is the kind who likes poetry? That's his question in a nutshell. Okay? Easy to understand. Here's a gold key rule. Don't you like how I put this in that hokey kind of gold color? I kind of like it. Hammers the point home. Gold key rule. Understand the purpose of the tool and the context and the syntax for which it is designed. Speed seduction is really about conceptual understanding. I don't want you simply to use a tool in an unintelligent or uninformed fashion. I want you to understand what the tool is designed to do and the context in which the tool is designed to work, when and where, and the syntax, meaning at what point in the transaction do you use the particular tool. Now, some tools we use all the time. Some tools we return to periodically. Some tools we do only once at a certain point. Now, poems are an example of a pattern that's a delivery vehicle for embedded commands and suggestions. As I've said before, think in terms of Trojan horses. Poems are also a gigantic quotes pattern. Remember quotes? Where we quote something we've read or something we've seen or something we've heard. Well, when you recite a poem, you're simply quoting what the poem says, right? You're not saying it. You're quoting what the poem said. Even if you wrote the poem, or you're making a claim that you wrote the poem, still, in that context, you're not saying it directly to her. You're reciting it in the form of the poem. Now, here comes a really interesting piece. Poems and jokes and stories are presented in a structure and a form that the unconscious mind recognizes. It recognizes that when things are presented in that particular format, it's time to shut off the critical faculty or diminish the critical faculty and suspend disbelief. So let's talk about this, the willing suspension of disbelief and the unconscious and its ability to recognize structure and process and form rather than content. Let's talk about what I mean by that. What is the willing suspension of disbelief? The willing suspension of disbelief is what makes possible the enjoyment of theater and poetry and art of all kind. That's my cat Tabitha whining at me. Here's how I define the willing suspension of disbelief. It is setting aside of the critical faculty so that you can enjoy a particular experience. Now, this is really a very common, everyday kind of situation. When you sit in a play or watch a movie in a theater, when you watch TV, when you fall in love, if you don't think falling in love requires a willing suspension of disbelief, then you're not paying attention. Listening to a bedtime story or a joke or a poem. Let's talk about this. What do I mean a willing suspension of disbelief? Well, when you go into a theater to watch a movie, you have to temporarily pretend that you're not sitting in the theater. You basically have to hallucinate away the theater. You have to imagine or pretend that there's no one else in there with you, that you're not surrounded by four walls, that you don't have a roof over there. You have to imagine away all that stuff and put yourself into the world of the movie. When you're a kid and you hear a bedtime story, once upon a time, the minute you hear once upon a time, you know, hey, it's only a story, relax, don't criticize it, and just accept it as it's presented. So the willing suspension of disbelief can take place in many different contexts, in many different formats, but what all these various experiences share is in order to enjoy them, indeed even to participate in them, you have to suspend your disbelief. So human culture requires language, it requires transmission and reception, but it also requires often the suspension of disbelief. There's a gold key understanding for any kind of persuasion. And I understand that E.L. only asked about poems, but I like to take the lesson a little bit broader. The unconscious recognizes structure and form, not content. See, if I start out a story once upon a time with a kid, it doesn't matter what follows after, the mind is going to relax the critical faculty and turn on the childlike imagination. It's the once upon a time, it's the form, the format, not the content, that sets up the receptivity to any kind of story, regardless of the content. When they dim the lights in the theater, that's your signal to forget that the theater is there. Suspend your disbelief and enter into the realm of the movie. Doesn't matter whether the content of the movie is a crappy kung fu lesbian teenage hunchback roller skating Siamese twin vampire movie. I like those kind of movies. Or whether it's an Academy Award winning film. Doesn't matter. You may enjoy the content more or less, but that suspension of disbelief has nothing to do with the content. It has to do with the format and the context in which the content is presented. Does this make sense? So the beauty about poems is that poems are another way of presenting something in a context, in a format, in a form, through a structure that the unconscious mind recognizes as something that can only be received if you turn off your critical faculty, if you turn off the left brain logical part of the mind and turn on the receptive, fantasy-prone, childlike imagination. Do you see? So in a sense, every poem and every story and indeed every movie is a trance induction because it's taking away the critical faculty, or at least extremely diminishing it. You see? Now, ideally, poems should not be used to create or induce anything. In my experience with using poems, and I haven't used them in a long time, I only have used them to reinforce or repeat what I've already done in the seduction. So for example, if I've used a pattern that talks about what is it like when you feel fascinated. Debbie, when you feel fascination, what's that like for you? I'll only then do a fascination poem after I hear what she has to say and bring those responses out of her. So the poem is simply going to repeat and reinforce the suggestions and the commands and the themes that she and I have already discussed. Does that make sense? And again, I'm going to use the poem to reinforce and repeat suggestions and commands. So again, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I am a human being. Sorry. See there? So if I were going to do a fascination pattern, I'd then go into a fascination poem. So here's the algorithm. Do your pattern, whether it's a fascination pattern, a connection pattern, an attraction pattern. follow up with a poem reinforcing that. Yes? Now, oh dear. You see, I'm working, even though I'm not feeling particularly well, I'm still working for you. Then here's the really wicked cool thing. Much more interesting to me than the poem is this third piece. It's really going to blow your mind. Watch this. This is really clever, really hypnotic, really wicked skillful. You get her to loop on the feelings and the imagery of the poem with thought-binding language. I'm going to explain this, but you're going to get her to loop over and over on the feelings and the imagery of the poem with thought-binding language. Pay attention, this is going to get really cool. Here's the thought binder language. So I will read this from the slide. I don't normally read directly from the slides, but then we'll go through it. We'll parse it out in the slides to come. So here's the language. So you've done the poem, and then I'll say something like, the interesting thing about poems is how just by taking a deep breath, all of the best images and the best feelings of that poem can come flooding through you again. My friend says it's like with each breath you take, each passing moment, the feelings and the images just get better and better. Like there's something here right now, this moment, you have to take, don't you? Think that's interesting? Let's go through this binder language. Okay, the interesting thing about poems. Now this is vague language. Interesting according to whom? Interesting in what way? I'm leaving all that out, so because I'm leaving it out, it's vague and it begins to create a suggestible state. Then I say, just by taking a deep breath. Well, who says so? Who said just by taking a deep breath? Also, it commands her to take the action. There is the command, take the deep breath. And here's a really interesting thing that's going to take a bit of explanation. It sets up a false cause and effect. It's saying, essentially what I'm saying without saying it is, taking a deep breath causes all of the best images and the best feelings from that poem to come flooding through you again. Now, I didn't say it directly, I implied it. Just by taking a deep breath. See what I'm saying? So it implies the causality. It's what's called false causation. Commands her to take an action, there's a false cause and effect. And once she does the behavior of taking the deep breath, because she accepts the link that it will cause her to feel the responses that I go on to describe, she's going to feel the responses. It's a very clever little bit of implied false cause and effect. It's really clever. So just by taking a deep breath, all of the best images and the best feelings from that poem can come flooding through you again. Now let's look at that. First of all, who says so? According to who is that going to happen? Where's my authority? Who's saying it? In what way are they going to come flooding through again? And what best images? Who's deciding what the best images are? Best images as decided by whom? See, the really great thing about this command is, first of all, it commands her to loop back around on the best feelings and images. So the work of the poem gets reinforced. So when she's listening to the poem, she's feeling the feelings and seeing the images. And now this command is telling her to run through it again in her mind. See? When you take a deep breath, all the best images and all the best feelings will come flooding through you again. Now, I didn't say it that directly. I said just by taking a deep breath, all of the best images and the feelings can come flooding through you. I didn't directly command it. I didn't say, you're going to take a deep breath and that will cause all the images to flood through you. But in effect, I implied it, so in it goes. So now she's reinforcing the images and reinforcing the feelings. And again, I don't tell her what those are. I just say the best ones. So her own mind will provide it. Her own mind is going to do a search this quickly. It happens unconsciously. Her unconscious mind is going to dive down and go, okay, grab those images, grab those feelings that are the most powerful, the most impactful, and make them come up again and repeat them. Now, you see, if I had made this direct hypnotic commands, it would have been a lot of direct hypnotic commands. Instead, I indirectly imply them, and in they go. Let's look at more of the language. I said, now we say, my friend says. That's our old buddy quotes. I'm now quoting a friend of mine. With each breath you take, each passing moment, the feelings and images just keep getting better and better. Now, this is more false cause and effect. It could be that with each breath she takes, the images fade out, or nothing happens to the images. They don't change in any way. In fact, what I'm saying is, when you take a breath, it will cause you to make the images and the feelings get stronger and stronger. But again, I didn't say it directly, it would have been resisted. So this is implied commands, implied suggestions. It's really wicked, using that false cause and effect. And what is the behavior that's going to cause her to have the feelings and the images get better and better? Is it some arcane behavior like, well, every time you stand on your head and whistle Dixie, the images will get better and the feelings will get better? No, I'm looking at the two things that must happen. Time passing and breathing, which I guarantee you is going to happen unless she drops dead. You understand? In effect, I'm saying you're going to breathe, right? True. Time is going to pass, true. And that will cause the feelings and the images to get better and better and better. So the other thing it does is it implies that the images will keep repeating. The only way the feelings and the images can keep getting better and better is if they're still there in her mind, right? If they're not there, if the feelings are no longer there, if the images are no longer there, they can't keep getting better and better. So this is also implies that the images will stay there. Does that make sense? So they keep repeating again. So now we have another loop going. So, and not only are they repeating, but they're getting better. You understand? They're increasing. So in effect, I'm really binding her mind. I'm saying, okay, take those images and feelings that you just looped through again, loop through them again. They're going to loop through again, whether you like them to or not, because your breathing and time passing will cause that to happen. Oh, and by the way, as they loop through, they'll feel even better. So we're getting repetition and acceleration all in one little bit of languaging. This is actually very clever. If you're interested in mastering hypnotic technique, you've got to study this module very closely again and again. And then this bit of language. There's something here right now, this moment. Now, first of all, notice the self-gestures. There's something here right now, this moment. I'm framing my face. I'm, in fact, creating a picture frame and putting my face in it. And again, we're being vague. I'm not saying what's here, right? I'm not saying what's here at all. In no way. And I'm just saying there's something here right now, this moment. And that's vague too. But I'm doing it to prime her for action. You see? I'm not reciting the poem just so she can get hot and bothered and forget those feelings. Nor am I giving her a literary recital. I'm doing it to create these feelings, create these images, so she will take action on them. This is really important. Then you have to take. Again, this is a call to action, but it's vague. I'm not saying what that action is. Does that mean blow me? Does that mean kiss me? Does that mean take me for a car ride to Nevada? I don't say. But her mind is going to fill in the blank in the context of the suggestions that are already laid out in the poem and the previous discussions that we've had. Now this is kind of arcane, but I think you're starting to get the point here. There's a lot of hypnotic technique going on here. You want to watch this module several times. And doing that may allow you to realize that you're getting more and more clear on this. How many cycles and loops are we doing here? Well, there's one cycle of loops and suggestions during the initial patterning, whenever we're discussing fascination or attraction. It loops around a second time when she hears the poem, because remember, the poem is simply going to reiterate, repeat, recycle whatever we brought up in the first pattern, the first discussion. Loops around a third time when we do the thought binding language, that the commands are to recall the best feelings and the best images. And now there's a wicked fourth time when the thought binding language gets her to repeat the images and feelings again as they get better and better and better. So we now reinforce the suggestions 4 times. 4 times. Now this brings up an important hypnotic law. This is a law of compound suggestion. And essentially compound suggestion, the law is that each time you repeat a suggestion, the next suggestion goes in even stronger. So if I give the suggestion once, the second round of suggestions, suggestion number 1 will be reinforced. So once the unconscious accepts a suggestion, each additional repetition makes the prior suggestion go in that much stronger and have that much more effect. General Patton once said, "I never like to pay for the same piece of real estate twice." So a master seducer doesn't just create an effect. See, an okay seducer creates an effect with his language, but he doesn't make sure there's stuff to make sure that gets followed up on. He doesn't do anything to ensure that the woman sees an opportunity in front of her. A master seducer makes sure that he leaves, how can I use a metaphor? You know the story of Hansel and Gretel? Once upon a time, Hansel and Gretel got lost in the forest, but they left a trail of breadcrumbs. I always want to have that trail of breadcrumbs back into someone's mind once I've influenced them. So if you're going to create a powerful effect, build in ways to recall and compound it and amplify it and repeat it. And granted that people are going to ruminate on things anyway, they're going to dwell on things, why not precondition them to dwell on their experiences with you in a way that makes them hungry for more and convinces themselves that they must act on it in a way that you want them to act. Now that's really influential, that's really suggestion. So what I want to suggest to EL is that you give this at least two or three watchings, particularly this last part. As far as particular poems, you can find those poems in the pattern archives that are part of the starter kit. You can get the starter kit free. It's part of the resources page. Okay, let me know how that works, EL. I hope the rest of you enjoyed this. I really want your feedback on this one because there's some wicked hypnotic stuff here.
Hello, students. Well, yet another instructional video module for October, and this one is about how to create and use seduction poetry. How does seduction poetry really work? I've never done a module yet on this one, and so I'm going to go through a poem that I wrote for a young lady that she received quite well, previously reluctant and recalcitrant young lady, and I'm going to analyze the various elements of the poem for you. This will require me to read the poem, which I feel kind of ooky about reading a seduction poem to guys, but you know, it's what I do as a teacher. Got to make that sacrifice, huh? Okay, so in this module, we're going to look at how poetry uses metaphor and embedded commands and ambiguity, vagueness, and sexual metaphor. So here's the poem. I'm going to read it. Sorry, guys. Got to read you the poem, and then we'll go through it stanza by stanza. Okay, here we go. Turn and see the archway that exists inside your mind. Now, feel my voice that leads you through. Leave normal things behind. You step more even deeper in, the higher up you go. You feel yourself surrendering, and thoughts begin to flow. For me, you find your fingers touch as this voice spreads you wide. You feel yourself expanding. Expectations left outside. The archway opens deeper, deeper, faster, stronger still. A heart is pounding somewhere, making way for stronger will. A little sound escapes your lips. You picture private things. A longing for, so hard, so strong, to moisten private wings. The archway now becomes a gate that holds a flooding tide. Now see the key that's held by me. Imagine, slipped inside. And in that moment of entering, you're lifted past the walls. So slick, so wet, so deep on fire, soon nothing left at all. Except for your pure opening, and all will soon explore. Breathe in and feel the power of me and your desire for more. Okay, so now let's look at it archway, stanza by stanza. First of all, I want to point out the word archway. This is a use of a metaphor. Archway is a metaphor that has strong symbolic meaning. It can represent two opposites coming together to create strength. When you take two opposites and you lean them into each other, two halves lean into each other and create that archway. That creates strength that can carry a tremendous load, but it's also an opening to go somewhere new. Now we have a phonetic ambiguity that exists inside your mind. Am I saying you are mine or your mind? The unconscious hears both. Then there's there's some vagueness here. Leave normal things behind. Well, what normal things? Behind what? Behind where? Normal in what way? According to whom? And if you're leaving normal things behind, what does that imply about what you're moving into? If normalcy is left behind, then you're moving into something what?
extraordinary. Oh, by the way, there's also an embedded command, forgive me for not pointing it out, feel my voice. Now also that's vague. I didn't say feel my voice doing what. So I leave it vague. And when you're vague and ambiguous, when you're vague, the imagination fills in the blanks in a way that makes sense and excites it. You step more even deeper in, the higher up you go. You feel yourself surrendering and thoughts begin to flow. So let's look at some vagueness. Deeper in what way? What do you mean you step deeper in? Deeper in what way? How? Deeper in where? Then there's a contrast here between deeper and higher. What I'm doing here is creating a sort of apposition of opposites. The deeper their body surrenders, the higher the freedom their mind feels to allow the body to respond. And high in what way? High as in altitude or high as on drugs, on sex? It's ambiguous, you see. Phonetic ambiguity, sexual metaphor, and embedded command. Feel yourself. Now, I designed this poem to get the girl masturbating on the phone. So feel yourself. Does that mean you reach down and she reaches down and fingers her vagina, or she feels herself opening, that herself, she can feel herself inside opening up? It's not clear. Then there's a vagueness. Thoughts begin to flow. What kind of thoughts? Well, the tonal inflection, when I say you feel yourself surrendering and thoughts begin to flow, that would be terrifying thoughts, but I read it as such. You feel yourself surrendering and thoughts begin to flow. The tonal inflection tells the unconscious how to resolve the vagueness in a sexual direction. For me, you find your fingers touch. Okay, there's some vagueness. You find your fingers touch. Does that mean your fingers touch, her fingers touch her pussy? Does it mean she finds that the sensitivity in her fingertips is suddenly really strongly in her awareness? What does it mean? There's sexual metaphor here as well. This voice spreads you wide. Well, spreads what part of you wide? There's vagueness and sexual metaphor again. You feel yourself. There's that command again to masturbate. Here's vagueness, expanding. Expanding how? Where? Does this mean the walls of her pussy are expanding and stretching? Or is it that her mind is opening to something new? I want you to get this. It means both. That her mind is expanding to something new and her pussy's opening. Which reinforces that suggestion that the deeper she goes in letting her body go, the higher her mind opens. Okay? Expectations left outside. Well, what kind of expectations? It's vague. It's also a way of freeing women to have a stronger sexual response, because you see, many women get in their own way because they feel the pressure and expectation of men to come and their own expectation. So essentially we're creating a place where all the old normal ideas and all the old expectations are left outside. The only thing she experiences is the pleasure of her response and her desire for more. The archway opens deeper, deeper, faster, stronger still. A heart is pounding somewhere, making way for stronger will. Vagueness and sexual metaphor. The archway opens deeper. Again, what does that mean? Archway could also be a sexual metaphor for her vagina. You know, it's sort of shaped like an archway. Deeper, faster, stronger still. They're also sexual metaphors. It's a description of fucking, right? By the way, when you read a poem, you should be visualizing what it is you want her to visualize. Put aside your fear and just do it. Vagueness. A heart is pounding somewhere. Well, wow, that's a really good one. A heart is pounding somewhere. That is so vague. A heart is vague, and then somewhere is vague, and it creates a hypnotic application. I don't say your heart is pounding somewhere, which is what I would have used to have said before I really understood this stuff. A heart is very vague. Whose heart? Pounding somewhere. What does that mean? It sort of creates a hypnotic dissociation where she can imagine herself somewhere else with her heart pounding. It creates an inward search for the meaning of the experience. Finally, making way for stronger will. Well, making way how? Stronger in what way? For whose stronger will? It's also a sexual metaphor. It could symbolize the vagina opening. This is really about the primary female fantasy of being taken in some mysterious place, removed from ordinary reality by a very powerful man. So being taken to and in at some mysterious place, removed from ordinary reality by a powerful man. A little sound escapes your lips. You picture private things. Did you get what I just did there? It was just like thoughts in a previous stanza. A longing for, so hard, so strong, to moisten private wings. Again, vagueness, a little sound. What kind of sound? I didn't say a moan or a gasp. I just said a little sound. So her mind probably will visualize it and fill in the blank with the sound. Escapes your lips. Notice that. Escapes means it's so powerful, you're trying to hold it back, but you can't. It implies some kind of gasp or sexual sound, but it doesn't state it. So if I said a little moan escapes your lips, might encounter some resistance. Picture private things. That's an embedded command to visualize something. But I don't say what to visualize. I say private things. What private things? Her business affairs, her bank book, her tax statement? No. The inflection of private things makes it sexual imagery. You get it? So hard, a longing for, so hard, so strong. Okay, this is an obvious sexual metaphor. I might have worked better to have left out what was hard and strong. I think it would have been better to say a longing for, a hard, a strong. That way, instead of saying, maybe it would have worked better to say a hard, a strong. Oh, she would have said hard, strong, what? And she would have filled in the blank. Cock. But it worked. Moisten private wings. Well, that's vague. What does that mean? Moisten private wings. It's a metaphor for your pussy lips. Vaginal walls. Not yours, but hers. You get it? The archway now becomes a gate that holds a flooding tide. Now, see the key that's held by me. Imagine, slipped inside. Okay, again, sexual metaphor. The archway is now becoming a gate, which means it's a metaphor for the pussy lips and also a flooding tide. That's a sexual metaphor for a tide of sensations and also vaginal juice. See the key that's held by me. That's a command to go inside your mind and imagine me standing there in this place as sexual response, holding the key to your response. I'm the one who's going to unlock it and set you free. Of course, the key is also a metaphor for my cock. Okay? Imagine slipped inside. Imagine who slipped inside. What slipped inside? Slipped inside where? It's vague. But given everything else, she's going to imagine me slipped inside. And in that moment of entering, you're lifted past the walls. So slick, so wet, so deep on fire, soon nothing left at all. Okay, moment of entering. Is that not a sexual metaphor? I don't have to spell it out for you. Lifted past the walls. This was someone who's had some emotional barriers. What does it mean to move past emotional barriers and thought barriers to sexual surrender and enjoyment? Well, that's what it means. Sexual metaphor. So slick, so wet, so deep on fire. That's a little bit, I confess, a heavy metaphor. But at this point in the poem, when she's been taken away to a mysterious place, separated out from ordinary reality, and surrendering to the will of being taken by a strong man, the metaphor is acceptable. To put that earlier on, no. I think it might have worked better to instead say, the wings unfolding, flutter fast, soon nothing left at all. That would be a good metaphor for the pussy lips opening wide and coming. And soon nothing left at all. What does that mean? No resistance, no thought, just the pure pleasure of the orgasm and the joining with me? Who knows? Except for your pure opening. Well, now we define what's left. The only thing left is her pure opening. Does that mean her vagina or her body and her psyche opening to me? It means both. And all we'll soon explore. Vague. Breathe in and feel the power of me. Those are commands. And what kind of power of me? It's vague. Which power? Where? And your desire for more. That's vague. Desire for more what? She has to fill in the blank. But it also does something else. It says the fact that you're feeling pleasure means you desire more pleasure. You're not done. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. We should do an entire discussion on this. It's another power-packed module. Go ahead. I give you permission to claim this as your own. Read it to girls and say you're discussing this poem in your literature group and possible changes.
Hey guys, it's Ross Jeffries with another instructional video module. This says instructional video module 1. There's actually 3 of them for November 9, so I don't care which order you watch this in. This is about a more intricate and advanced subject, which is creating hypermotivation for her to respond. I actually have a whole set of DVDs called the Hyper Response Course.
But I want to go over some basic ideas about creating the frame and the context and the motivation for women to be responsive. And you're going to see why this is important in a moment. You see, a woman's response is not just about the language patterns. Let me clarify what I mean. About 20% of the women who you meet are going to be hyper-responsive to any kind of pattern or quiz or game that you throw at them. This is the way they go through their life. They go through life being hyper-responsive. They're highly suggestible. They respond with strong emotion and strong feeling and strong visualization. They're delightful to be around and lots of fun to seduce, and really, quite frankly, pretty easy to seduce. Now, fortunately, the distribution along the looks curve is quite even, so some of the most beautiful women in the world happen to be like this. But outside of that, outside of women being naturally strongly hypnotically responsive, what else encourages responsiveness in women? How can we create the context and the frame and the motivation for women to be more responsive if they're not already the 20% of the population that's highly responsive? So one of the ways that we can do this is introduce a subject matter or a theme that is very interesting to women. The theme itself is just interesting to women. Themes like escape, indulgence, connection. Another good one is how do men think? How do men think? Women are fascinated by this, especially how men think about women. Do men understand women? How do men think when it comes to what they find attractive in women? These are all subjects that women are inherently motivated to respond to. They just carry a lot of strong charge and interest. So interest in the theme and the subject matter creates responsiveness to whatever you say or whatever you ask within that theme or subject matter. Second thing is interest in the exploration of her own processes and passions. What do I mean by that? Well, if you meet a woman, for example, who has a strong passion, let's say she's an artist or a dancer or a race car driver, and this is something that really, really strongly takes a lot of her emotion, a lot of her attention, a lot of her energy, then by asking questions that require her or introduce the opportunity for her to explore how she does that, not why, but how, you really evoke a lot of interest. For example, let's say a woman is a dancer or a choreographer, and you don't say, well, why do you like to dance? But instead you say, I'm fascinated by creative people and the creative process. So when you come up with a dance, how does it start? Does it start with a strong emotion that creates movement in you? Or do you find a certain rhythm or movement, and once you indulge in that, the emotion comes out? Tell me your process for creating the passion in what it is you create. Now, that subject itself carries a strong charge because it's something she's deeply passionate about. So if you know a woman has a strong passion, that requires a lot of imagination as well. If she's an actor, a dancer, something in the arts, or even a scientist. Scientists can be deeply passionate and very emotional about what they do. Then asking her process, not why. Why do you do it? But how. When you make a discovery, how do you do that? Does the discovery come fully charged, fully clothed, right into you? Or is it something that comes in little tiny pieces that you have to put together? This is the kind of thing, exploring her process for her passions is extremely powerful. There's a strong motivation to respond to that. And then based on those responses, you can map over into something more sexual. Again, I just gave this example of Sergeant Debbie, a professional choreographer. Number 3, set a frame of challenging her to be responsive. Set a frame where she verbally commits to being responsive. One way to do this is I like to say to women, if you could name 3 things about yourself that are uniquely attractive, that have nothing to do with your physical appearance, what do you think they would be? And I'll let her answer, whatever it is her answer. My response will be, I look for 3 things. When I'm with a woman who I'm going to spend some time with, there's 3 things I look for that are non-physical. First is a sense of humor. Obviously, it's really important that you share laughter with someone. I remember being with a girlfriend who was so funny, I would laugh so hard inside you. You hear that, guys? Do you hear that sexual command? So hard inside you, that little suggestion. You just drop all the barriers and dissolve, feel totally free. So even when I'm describing something, I'm always taking the opportunity to throw in the commands and suggestions. You see that? Second, openness to new learning. It's a great thing to bring your own learning, your own experiences to the table, but it's really attractive to me to find a woman who can open your mind, take in a new direction. that at first you didn't realize you really want to take. That's attractive. See and hear the commands and suggestions there. Finally, number 3, you bring your own mind, you bring your own thinking to the table. Whether you feel pulled forward by a strong desire or pushed ahead by a driving need, you know that you go for it for all your own reasons that make sense to you. So no one has to tell you. You don't worry about what your friends would say or what your family might think or even who you were a moment before. But instead, you find your own reasons to go for what you want. You see that, guys? So again, I'm challenging her to be these things by saying it's what I find attractive. And I'm also using it as an opportunity to embed commands and suggestions. Vibe. Women can become responsive to you because they're responsive unconsciously to your vibe. The vibe of being very strong, very commanding, yet very curious, yet very funny, yet vulnerable, willing to share your truth. These are all very attractive. And when you set up the right vibe, any language patterns that you use are going to be far more attractive to her. She's far more likely to respond to them. Then you can link responding to you to a high value outcome for her. Here's what I mean by that. If you can present what you're doing to her as a way for her to learn about something she's always wanted to learn about, or as a way for her to achieve something she's always wanted to achieve. Let's say, you can position it so, what if I were to show you, Debbie, how to be instantaneously attractive on a very non-superficial level to any guy when you walked into a room before you open your mouth? Would you like to learn that? Most girls go, sure. And then they're going to be far more likely to respond to what you give them. Now, of course, what I would teach them at that point is to say, well, in order to be really attractive, you need to know how to feel deeply attracted and send that vibe out non-verbally. So I teach her how to get into a sexual state, ramp up the feelings, ramp it up her feelings, open your eyes, look at me. I'd link it all to myself covertly as I taught her how to do this. Time and again, I've seen if you can link something that's going to get her responsive to a high value outcome for her, she's far more likely to respond to it. So what happens then is you have to set up the framing of how and why it's going to be of value to her. This is very useful even for so-called deeply resistant women who are, for example, a little suspicious of what I do. If I can reframe it that their response means that they're going to learn something that will be of great value to them, they'll become responsive. And if I can also link that as well to her having to match the non-physical qualities I find attractive to a woman, then I have double motivation. You can also link her responding to her desire to be helpful. Women want to be helpful. So if you say something like, I consider you to be a woman of great depth and dimension, someone who isn't merely physically attractive, but someone who has the kind of qualities that make you stop and think, I want to be around this person a long and deep time. You see, I'm pointing to myself as I describe what I like about her. See how clever I am? So, obviously, we're in each other's pictures. Obviously, it's never going to be the case where you and I will be together. But at least I can learn something from you as an example to me. So, if I were to ask you, when you're really, really attracted to a guy, when you feel drawn, whether it's drawn ahead by a compelling desire or pulled forward by a powerful need, I'm curious. If you think about it, what are the 2 or 3 non-physical things about this guy that you find really, truly, deeply attractive? Let her describe them, whatever they are. Oh, he's strong, he's motivated, he's gentle. Let her describe it. You say, wow, so strong, motivated, and gentle. And when you experience all that with one person, if you could put one word to what it is that lets you experience with this person, what would it be? So let's say she says elation. Elation. I think that must be such a wonderful but rare experience to not just feel all that elation, but to look through it and to realize, wow, he's here. Thank you. You've really been helpful for me today, and you've helped me. And from this, I think I can really go forward and find someone who's so much like you in so many ways. Thank you, Debbie. You see it? You see there? And so you can do it that way, but link into her desire to be helpful. Get it? Clever. And so these are the kind of things that will cause a woman to become more responsive. investment. This is crucial. To have a woman invested. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you're always moving forward, showing her one interesting thing after another interesting thing, if you're putting all the energy into it, at no point does she have to reach for it. At no point does she have to make some kind of work to get it. At no point does she say, yes, I'm really enjoying this. Show me more. I often will be showing women cool things, so I'll stop and say, you know, are you really enjoying this on a scale of 1 to 10? How much do you enjoy it? If they say 10, I'll say, great. You want to see more? Say more, please. I'll make them do that because that may sound silly, but we don't reach for things or ask for things that aren't of value. We only reach for things and ask for things and rate things that are real and that do have value. You have to understand creating attraction and arousal, all that stuff is nice, but for many women, it's just a smoke cloud that dissipates, that disappears unless you get them invested in it. That's what makes it real, you see? So these are the things that make them far more responsive to what we're going to do. So if you're ever stuck with a girl who appears resistant or non-responsive, you have to back away for a moment from the patterns and the format of the patterns. Instead of asking, am I going to do a game or am I going to do a quiz? Should I ask a seduction question? Step back for a minute and say, okay, what are one of these 6 or more frames that I can create? If you can use more than one, more is the better, to make them whatever type of pattern I use, game, question, joke, quiz, whatever, more effective. Do you understand? This is about stepping back and getting a broader level question, saying, how do I create the frame and the motivation and the context, given what I know about this person, to become more responsive? I hope you've enjoyed this. This is obviously a subject for a lot more discussion. Each one of these 6 responsive frames could be a day-long seminar in and of itself. But in teaching the subject, generally, I have to avoid being too specific, or these modules would be 5 hours long. Give me your comments on this and respond. Give me feedback, please. Hey guys, it's Ross Jeffries with an Answers to Students video module for Jiolu, December 2009. He asked about tonality, but I actually consider it to be part of a broader question, which is mastering what I call vocal congruence. A little bit more intricate and more useful than just thinking in terms of tonality. This is part 1 because we're going to do this probably 2 or 3 parts over the coming months. I want to introduce the idea of vocal congruence. Rather than small chunking just around the concept of tonality, which is useful, let's talk about vocal congruence, of which tonality is just one element. Much like the United States is just part of North America, North America is just part of the continents, and the continents are just part of the world. Vocal congruence, I define this as the alignment of the digital and analog aspects of your spoken communication. So now that I've thoroughly confused you, let me break that down and unpack that further. By digital, I mean what's there or not there. Digital means it's either there or it's not. The light is either on or it's off. The radio is either on or it's off. Either the word is there or it's not there. It's 1 or a 0. Either you say a exact word or you don't say that exact word. Digital. Analog is anything that varies across and along a range. For example, the volume on a stereo. Yes, a stereo can be turned on or off, but also you can raise the volume or you can lower the volume. Temperature controls for a room. So it's not that there's no temperature. There's always going to be some temperature, but you can vary the temperature along a range. So the basic elements of vocal congruence are voice volume, the loudness or softness with which you speak and being able to vary that properly. Voice tempo. How fast do you speak? Do you speak really fast or do you speak really slowly, or can you control that? Emotional inflection. What emotions do you bring to whatever it is you're saying? If you say to someone, have you ever felt really excited? Do you think that's going to elicit what you want from them? If you talk about a time when you were feeling, I could just remember what it's like to feel so turned on. There's voice resonance. Does your voice resonate? Is there a vibratory quality to it? There are other elements. We could break down vocal congruence more, but I want to start with vocal resonance, voice resonance, because I think it's when a lot of people think of tonality, they think about that. That's really what they're talking about. Ideally, I think, and what I've found in my years of doing this and teaching it and experimenting with it, it's having a resonance that's mostly coming from here, from the chest, a little bit from the throat. Now, I used to talk high up here with a tight throat and also just a little bit nasally. The biggest errors people make with voice resonance, the worst one I think, is they speak very nasally. And I think I call it like Bugs Bunny. You ever see Bugs Bunny on the TV or on YouTube? Hey, Doc, what's up? That kind of Bronx thing. There's a guy on the radio, his name is Gerald Salente, who he teaches like this trends research, crazy stuff. But I can't stand listening to him because he sounds like Bugs Bunny. His voice is up here and it makes him sound like a cartoon. So there's that big error of speaking through your nose. And then a lot of times when we get excited and we restrict our breathing to the chest, we breathe high in the chest, what happens is you'll find that people start to talk from the throat. And, your throat gets a little tight and you start talking from there, and that also gets in the way of things. So I really want it to be mostly resonating from here in the chest and just a little bit here. And also it becomes a really good anchor for me. When I can feel my voice resonating to myself, when I don't just hear my voice, but as I feel it resonate just a little bit here in my chest, it reminds me that I'm in control of myself and my responses, and it puts me into a really powerful state. So the right voice resonance not only is well received by women, but it's also a really good anchor for you to remind you, wow, I can feel it. I feel my confidence and my power in here. So let me give you a couple of drills. Nose, mouth, throat, chest. It's really simple. The drill goes, and I got this from Richard Bandler. I give full credit where credit is due. This is directly from something Richard taught many, many, many years ago. Always give credit where it's due. Okay, so you want to go, this is my nose. This is my mouth. This is my throat. And this is my chest. Right? This is my nose. This is my mouth. This is my throat. This is my chest. This is my chest. And when you say this is my chest, you want to be able to feel your voice resonating and vibrating against your hands. That's where you want to be. Not all the way down here, blah, blah, like Henry Kissinger. But right here, see? There's some in the throat, but mostly it's coming from the chest. You can feel it vibrating here. So, this is my nose. This is my mouth. This is my throat. This is my chest. And when I speak from here, I'll make more money and get more pussy and make more friends than I ever thought imaginable. So run that drill 10 times. Second drill, I want you to breathe from the belly instead of the throat. Now, I've shown this to you before, but breathe deep into the abdomen. When you breathe deep, deep, deep into your abdomen, expand your belly outwards as you breathe. And now, put your hand here and speak from the throat, from the chest, excuse me. Put your hand here and speak from the chest. Now vary it. Try breathing high up into your chest. So breathe by just lifting the front part of the chest up. And then you'll see that the natural thing to do is to speak from your throat. It becomes very hard to speak from your chest if you're breathing high up into your chest, you see. The trick is you want to breathe one level lower than where you want to be speaking from. So if you want to be speaking from the chest, you need to breathe into the belly. If you want to speak from the throat, breathe into the chest. Now, why you would want to speak from the throat, I don't know. Does that make sense? So breathe into the belly. And now put your hands on your chest and see how easy it is to breathe, to speak from there. Now breathe high into your chest. And see how easy it is to speak from the throat. You see? So what you want to do here is really practice breathing from the belly into the belly. You breathe in by expanding your belly outward, pushing your belly outward. All right, there's going to be more on this. Work with these drills. Tell me what you think.
Hey students, it's Ross Jeffries, and this is part of an ongoing series on building vocal congruence. Last month, well, that was December 2009, I did an answer to Giliob. He wanted to know about how to improve his tonality, and I made the comment that tonality is really a small piece of what I call vocal congruence. So this month, I want to talk about emotional inflection, making sure that the emotions we express match the words that we say. This is very short, very simple module, but I think chunking it small like this will enable you to practice and get it in little pieces. Emotional inflection tone. Again, we want to be congruent. We want our facial expressions, our voice inflection to match the words that we're using. So for example, if I say,
I really want you to feel confident. That's really not going to do it. Do you understand? We want the word and the tone to line up. So here's the exercise. Pick a neutral word like watermelon. I'm assuming watermelon doesn't have a lot of emotional charge for you. If watermelon does, if you're a freak who likes to fuck watermelons or whack off into them, pick something else. Pick the word brick if you want, a neutral word. Now what I want you to do is say the neutral word watermelon out loud 5 times with flat tonality, flat emotional inflection. So watermelon, 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 watermelon. No emotional tonality, no emotional inflection there. Now try it again, but this time express an angry feeling. Like, you ever have someone flip you off on the freeway or someone almost run you over? Watermelon! 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 See? Do it again with a happy feeling. Watermelon! 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 Watermelon. You get it. Do it again with a sexual feeling. Now go back to the neutral feeling. It's a very simple exercise. Try it. Let me know how it works. Very simple. Hi guys, it's Ross Jeffries, and welcome to the instructional video module for June 2009. In this module, we're going to be talking about sexual state accelerators. We're going to be talking, you notice I put part 1. That's because this is going to be one module, but I'm going to continue it as a series for at least the next month and perhaps the month after that. So we're going to be talking about some ways to use language, sexual metaphor, phonetic ambiguity, and some setup phrases to take a state that you've got a woman in and then accelerate it. This is going to be pretty good stuff. Pay attention. What are accelerators? Let me define the term. An accelerator is any kind of tool or tools that we use to amplify and increase a woman's sexual state up to the point where she's ready for action. Now look at what's presupposed. The presupposition is the state's already there. We've already created them through some other pattern or joke or game or story, or the virtue of our vibe or our touch. It's already there. You understand? The accelerators don't create the vibe or the energy or the sexual feeling. They just take what's there and they amp it up. And notice what I said. Did I say to the point where her pussy is soaking or where her head explodes? No, I said to the point where they're ready for action. And that presupposes we're calibrating her and testing for her readiness. Do you understand what I'm saying here? So remember, these tool sets assume and imply 2 things. You've already got the state and you know how to calibrate. So there we go. I just reaffirmed that with this slide. The slide's just repeating what I just thought. Now I often use this as part of a demo where I'm showing her how things work in her imagination. You know, the blammo is one example of that. After any pattern you do, no matter what it is, you can say, can you feel that? And then reach out and touch as you say that. Can you feel that? Would be an amazing thing to experience. Now, feel that. Does that mean feel that touch? Or does it mean feel what it is you've been describing? And because the unconscious mind resolves the ambiguity both ways, she'll associate it both ways. So I will use accelerators with any kind of pattern, and often with a pattern that ends with, can you feel that? So let's get to the accelerators. I like to use focusing language. Focusing language is part of an accelerator. So one part of accelerator is the focusing language, and the other is the sexual metaphor. So here comes the focusing language first. It doesn't matter whether you focus in, there's the command guys, focus in, on where you feel the feelings flowing first, or whether you focus in on where you feel those feelings flowing next, or whether you focus in on where you feel those feelings flowing absolutely the best. Now, I want you to notice something. Why am I talking about feelings flowing? Because when it comes to the kind of feelings that move women into action, they almost always don't just sit in one place. The difference between a feeling that a woman kind of sits with and likes to contemplate on and the one that drives her into action is the ones that drive her into action have a flow. So by telling her to focus in on where she feels the feeling flowing, the presupposition is that the feeling is flowing. This is a really powerful piece. That in and of itself accelerates things. If you've created a feeling and simply simply getting her to feel it as a flowing feeling, that in and of itself is going to accelerate the feeling. Now I'll start to introduce sexual metaphors and phonetic ambiguity and embedded commands. So let's see how this works. What matters is how you can find a place inside Now guys, what does that mean? Does that mean inside her vagina, inside her mind, inside her body? It's got a sexual connotation to it. How you can find a place inside where all that matters is how you want to succeed. That's the suggestion. You want to succeed. Well, am I saying succeed or succeed? Now, with me. It's a place where you can see yourself succeeding. By the way, what I do is I picture the way I want her to resolve the metaphor. So, the ambiguity. So if I'm in rapport with her and I say succeed, and I picture her sucking my cock, she will picture it that way too. In a way you can't even put your finger on the source of your excitement. Now put your finger on the source of your excitement. That's a command to masturbate. But if you could, then you could feel your opening. Now guys, does that mean feel that you're opening up to something new, or does it mean feel her opening, her vaginal opening? For a completely new direction, now you know what that one is, that you have to have now, tonight, that you can see yourself taking with me. See how it works? So here are some other great ones. Besides new direction and your opening and feel yourself, and you can feel yourself coming. What does that mean? Feel yourself. Happiness, which you sing. Come over and over and over again. So I'll say it's the kind of thing that could cause a person to see yourself coming over and over again to one conclusion. It's the kind of thing that could cause a person to feel yourself coming over and over again to one conclusion. Or it's the kind of thing that could cause a person to imagine yourself coming to one conclusion. Or, you know, it's like, I think sometimes the most powerful experiences occur when your mind, your conscious mind can just go down into your deeper mind. Concoction, concoct. Whatever it is, you can feel yourself concoct inside you. I've used all of these. These are remember, in and of themselves, phonetic ambiguities in isolation don't work, but as part of a chain of suggestion, and if you've already got those feelings created and you're already accelerating the feelings by turning them into flow, you have something really great here, trust me. In the coming months, we'll be talking about how to use stacking anchors and spatial anchoring and zip anchors for sexual acceleration, how to use symbol fractionation, and how to use synesthesia. Enjoy these, give me your feedback.
Hey guys, it's Ross Jeffries. I am doing this instructional video module remotely at the Starbucks because I'm on the road, but I wanted to get this done. So this is actually the second instructional video module for September. You may have been noticing a trend, which is I did a couple of instructional video modules the other month too, because frankly, what's turning out to happen is a lot of you guys are asking the same kinds of questions. So I'm going to just do more instructional video modules and fewer answers to students till that changes. Back in June, I did an instructional video module on sexual accelerators. Now recently in my London seminar, I had the chance to work with a wonderful demonstration subject, as you'll see. Her name is Charlotte, and I used some of my erotic touch to get Charlotte very hot and bothered. And this video clip that I'm going to use as the basis for presenting this lesson, you'll see what happens next, how I follow up on that. Now just for shits and giggles, if you haven't seen it, what I'll also do is upload the first part later, showing how I actually got Charlotte all hot and bothered in the first place. So let's get to this. Let me give a few comments here and then we'll get to the video. You'll notice a few things. I create her feelings using the touch in the earlier video, and now in this one, the first thing I do to accelerate it is I turn the feelings into a color. This is known as synesthesia. Neil Strauss wrote about it in The Game. He called synesthesia the nerve gas in the speed seducer's arsenal. I don't know that I agree with that characterization, but it's awfully powerful. The language is something like this. I'll say, you know, I invite you to notice that there's a color to that good feeling. Or you're probably not aware that there's a color to that good feeling. And if you could just see that color right now, what would it be? And you'll see in Charlotte's case, she immediately says yellow. The major command is see that color right now. Second, I externalize and symbolize, meaning that once I have her see a color for the feeling, I want to take control of that. So I turn the color into an object in my hand, in this case a ball. I say, notice what it's like as that color and that feeling flows into my hand to form a ball. Well, I don't need to show it to you here. You can see me doing it in the video. Third step is now that I have her there, I want her to focus. I'll say, now notice, breathe in, it gets bigger. Breathe out, it gets smaller. Breathe in, it gets bigger. Breathe out, it gets smaller. What am I doing here? I'm tying the reality of her experience to the reality of a physiological function that she has to do to live, which is breathe. Also, breathing tends to add energy and vividness into any visualization that either you're doing or your play partner is doing with you. Now I'm going to fractionate the symbol. What do? I pull it away. I say, notice, if I pull the color, if I pull the ball away, the feeling diminishes. But if I bring it closer, the feeling gets stronger, stronger, and even stronger. What am I doing here? I'm fractionating her. I'm saying, in fact, I'm teaching her physiology. It's going to build, 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 and I'm going to take it away a little bit. So then when I give it back, it builds even stronger. I'm teaching her to have stronger feelings with me by temporarily diminishing them and then giving them back. Women do this to us all the time, don't they? Sometimes they ignore us, sometimes they give us wonderful attention. Interesting thing. One more key point, this is really key, is you notice I'll introduce a distinction. I'll say not only can you tune in to the pleasurable feelings, but you can also tune into your desire for more. And you can go back and forth between the two, the desire for more and the pleasurable feelings. Why am I doing this? Because I want to train her that every time she feels pleasure with me, she feels a desire for even more. Just because a woman feels pleasure doesn't mean she'll feel compelled to act on it or even want to do anything with it at all. But if you can build in the generalization that her feeling pleasure leads her to want more, then you can tie in the generalization that the way to get that is to act on it and to please you. I want your comments on this. Tell me what you think. Enjoy the video.
Like that. I don't even have to touch her neck. I'll just touch mine. Well, that feels really good, doesn't it? Yeah, just like that. Now, you're probably not aware, there's a color to that really good feeling. But if you could see the color of that really good feeling right now, what would the color be?
Yellow.
Yeah. So I want you to notice how that yellow color flows right here, forming like a little ball in the palm of my hand. Breathe in, it gets bigger. Breathe out, it gets smaller. Breathe in, it gets bigger. Breathe out, it gets smaller. And notice if I pull that ball of color away, the feeling kind of diminishes. It's not as strong. It just kind of fades. But if I bring it closer, the feeling can get better and better and better. And not only does the feeling get better, but right here, if I hold it right here, you can not only tune into the good feeling, but take a deep breath and tune into the anticipation for even more good feeling. So there's the good feeling, but then there's the sensation of anticipation of wanting more good feeling. The anticipation of the feeling getting better. And you can go back and forth between the good feeling and the anticipation of having more. The anticipation of having more and the good feeling. And it doesn't matter which is stronger. It doesn't matter whether the good feeling is stronger or the anticipation and the desire for more good feeling is stronger. They can actually help each other. One of them makes the other stronger, and that one makes the other stronger. It's very interesting, isn't it? I don't know if you've ever thought about that, the difference between really, really good feelings and the desire for more good feelings. Maybe you have. But you know, if I bring it over here, it all just diminishes. It gets less strong. Doesn't it? Now, some really adventurous women will say, more please. Or they'll just think it. And so notice if I bring it closer, the feeling gets better, better, even better. That's right. And I can only get like this. This is about as close as I can get before the response gets way too strong and she breaks into something else. So we're going to keep it right here, okay? This is comfortable right here, isn't it? Like right there. And this is still comfortable, but any closer we're beginning to get too much, yes? Yeah, okay. So watch, take a deep breath. And I want you to notice that ball of color right here because it's really important. Not the ball of color or not the feeling.
Oh, now I see.
That's right, but what's behind it? Now you get it. See, it's like you can look through that at something you see. An opportunity to focus and learn and take all of that, what was the word? Hunger for more, and find a place where you can have it satisfied at last. You've been very good. Give her a huge hand. Thank you. Thank you. Now, just as a way of noticing responses, wow, this chair is really warm.
All right, this answers to students module is for Brian P. And this is going to be a really interesting one because Brian P. is interested in a topic that most of you are interested in, and that's how and whether he should get with women who are already with other men. So let's get to it. Here's his email again. It's not my purpose to read these slides to you verbatim, but his essential situation is he's had great success using speed seduction, except when he meets women who are already involved, especially married women. And he's saying he has a history of being cheated on, he knows how bad it feels, and he doesn't want to do that to anybody else. So he's wondering at what point he has to say, but wait a minute, this guy's a real loser, he's lost her, now it's my turn, now I'm going to get to know her. That's the essence of what he's asking. So my first rule in these situations is to gather more kind of information. Gather more information. So you have to ask, what kind of relationship is she in? Real hate-shunship, as I like to say. Is she happy with the relationship? Is she unhappy? Is she married? Does she have a serious boyfriend? Is she just dating someone? What's the situation? Then equally important, what are you looking for? What do you want, Brian? Are you looking for a one-night stand? Are you looking for a girlfriend? Are you looking for a fuck buddy? What is it that you're looking for? You've got to know that. My own rule for me personally is that boyfriends are fair game. Boyfriends are more than fair game. Unless she's unhappy and she's already decided to leave the person, married women are not fair game. Okay? Unless she's unhappy, she's already decided to leave, married women are not fair game. That's for me. You can have a different set of rules. Understand, no matter what your rules are, understand what the consequences of those rules are and whether you're prepared to pay those consequences. If you're not, then don't do it. Second rule, as far as possible, leave women better than how you found them. We've been teaching this since 1997, and I believe in it. If you think there's a good chance of doing harm, don't do it. You know, just a few minutes of pleasure or an hour or a week of pleasure isn't worth doing harm to another human being. It's just not. On the other side of the cover, women aren't children. We can't act like they're guardians, they're parents, they're caretakers, they're nannies. We're not that. They're adults. I'm going to assume that they're responsible and they know what they're doing and they're making their choices. Now, if your perception is that she's emotionally immature or that she can't take responsibility for actions, then don't deal with her. My assumption is that women are adults. They're not children. They know what they're doing. Third rule, no drama, ever. I once had an opportunity to get with an extraordinarily, I mean, super hot married woman. She was a massage therapist, drop dead gorgeous. But I didn't do it. One of the reasons I didn't do it is she talked about how she liked to make her husband jealous. I'm like, no, I'm not going near this. So if you sense there's any kind of genuine emotional instability, or if you sense she's doing this to create some drama in her primary relationship, just stay away. People die. People get killed because of this kind of thing. It is not worth, not only is it not worth dying over, it's not worth breaking a bone or spilling any of your precious body fluids like your blood, plasma, nor is it worth doing that to anybody else. So any opportunity, any chance you think there's going to be drama, don't do it. Now here's good news. Fourth rule is boyfriends mean little or nothing. Boyfriends mean little or nothing. So let's go over some basic sub-principles here. First of all, I'd like to talk about the monkey branch idea. Women are monkey branchers. What do I mean by that? That the monkey is not going to let go of one branch with both hands. He's generally speaking not going to get totally let go of the first branch until he's got at least one hand around the next branch. You understand what I'm saying? So women are monkey branchers. They don't want to let go totally of that old boyfriend until they're sure there's someone else they can move towards. You understand? So just because there's a boyfriend, think of the monkey. That's a good visualization to have. If she tells you she has a boyfriend, and even if it's true, just imagine the monkey reaching out for the next branch before it totally lets go of the first one. Second idea, this is crucial, female autopilot. A lot of times the I have a boyfriend response is just her autopilot response to her perception that she's being hit on. I'll say it again, a lot of times that autopilot response that I have a boyfriend is just her
a response to her perception that she's being hit on. And you know, when she has "I have a boyfriend," there's all sorts of responses you can come up with. My favorite nowadays is to say, "You don't need to convince me someone else finds you attractive. That's not how I'll make up my mind about you. You don't need to convince me someone else finds you attractive. That's not how I'll make up my mind about you." Now, what is that doing? That's taking her presupposition that she's rejecting you, and it's turning around and saying, no, she's trying to convince you that she's an attractive person. That's one good one. What's another good one? Boyfriend. I've only known you 5 minutes. You're already telling me your problems. Then you change the subject. Another good one. I have a boyfriend. Boyfriends are like colds. You can catch one at any time, but it doesn't mean you can't shake him off because you want to. Boyfriends are like colds. You can catch one at any time. Doesn't mean you can't shake him off if you want to. Give that little unconscious head nod. And if she nods back like that, a little nod, you're in. Another one I'll say, boyfriend. So are you telling me the bridge is out or there's just a little bump in the road? Next principle I want you to get. A hell of a lot of relationships start when at least one of the parties is already dating someone else. Most attractive people, if they have any self-esteem and any kind of skill set, are going to be with somebody. So most relationships start when at least one of the parties is already involved with someone. That's just the way it works. Final rule. Have a prosperity mentality. Don't have a poverty mentality. There's plenty of fish in the sea, even more poontang at the party. Plenty of fish at the sea, even more poontang at the party. So if you're doing this because you just so happen to accidentally get some kind of attraction from a woman who's already taken, then you're barking up the wrong tree. You're ignoring the skill set that you need to develop. Oftentimes when a student comes to me, I'll ask myself, what skill set has to be absent in order for this person to be presenting this challenge? And that tells me what they really need to work on. So it may be that you just haven't really developed your skill at meeting a lot of women. Now, in your case, it's not true, but for many people who get stuck on one woman or get stuck on someone who's already married, it's because they don't have a good skill set in meeting lots of women. Do you understand? So this is a really important thing. Make sure you're not covering up some skills deficit by over-focusing on women who are already involved in some way. Very important. As a teacher, I will ask again and again, what is the skill set that has to be absent in order for this person to have this challenge? What skill set would need to be present in order for this challenge to just melt away and disappear? So that's it for the answers to Brian P. Brian, please email me, let me know what you think, and I hope all of you found this information useful. Go out and use it. All right, I'm really excited to be presenting this instructional video module. It contains some extremely powerful principles for seduction and persuasion in virtually any area. This is what I really enjoy, when I take something that seems so innocent and uncover and unpack, so to speak, the principles operating behind it. So this is really good. This is an RJ classic. This is what I used to do. I haven't done this since actually 1994, but I used to do this early in my career. It's a little trick with a business card that I would use to get women to call me back first. And it actually worked about 60–70% of the time, and then for whatever reason I stopped doing it. But it's really clever and very well done. Now this pattern presupposes that you've done a lot of speed seduction patterning beforehand. You talked to her 30, 45 minutes, an hour, gotten really, really good responses. And I want you to play with it. I want you to try it, even if you're doing other things that have already worked for you really well. Even if you're someone who can pull a woman right out of an event, take her back to your place or take her into the alley. You know, I want you to try this just so you can see these principles in action. All it requires is that you have a business card with your name and your phone number on it. I don't want you to put your email. I don't want you to put your Facebook account, nothing. Just the phone number. So her only possible response is to call you at that number. You understand? Alrighty, let's get to it. Here's the pattern. The pattern goes like this. And you know what I need to do? I should have prepared a little bit better and had a business card with me. But hold on just 1 second. This is, I can just do this right here, right now. And let's see, I can pull a card out of my wallet.
Okay, so here you go. So you say, at some point in the coming week, and I'm not sure exactly when, you might find yourself thinking about this conversation. And you'll think to yourself, I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. And you'll reach for my number right here on this card. That's the pattern. That's it. Real simple. Do it one more time. At some point in the coming week, and I'm not sure exactly when, you might find yourself thinking about this conversation. And you'll think to yourself, I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. And you'll reach for my number right here on this card. Now, one variation is instead of saying reach, you could say look for my number right here on this card. It really doesn't make any difference. So let's get into the incredibly powerful principles that are all operating at the same time with this pattern. First of all, there's a very powerful principle. I use it in my marketing when I write sales letters. You should use it all the time. It's called the false profession of ignorance. Now, here's a little piece of languaging. At some point in the coming week, I'm not sure exactly when. When you say, I'm not sure, I don't know, this has a way of dissipating any possible resistance. Who can resist you when you say, I don't know, I'm not sure? You're not coming on as a know-it-all, as Mr. I know everything, and this is what's going to happen. So it diminishes resistance. And here's the other more subtle point. It gives the subject the illusion of participation, the illusion of choice, the illusion of control. If I don't know exactly when, if I say at some point in the coming week, and I'm not sure exactly when, first of all, it says, I don't know. When it says I don't know, it implies that they know, or that they will know. It implies either that they know or they will discover. And it also implies that the behavior is going to take place, right? If I say at some point in the coming week, and I'm not sure exactly when, you realize you might want to look further into speed seduction, right? The implication is that they will discover when they'll want to look more into speed seduction. You get it? So this also implies that the behavior that I'm about to describe in the next part of the pattern is going to take place. And I don't know when. It's simply a matter of how they're going to discover it. You get it? So the false profession of ignorance is incredibly powerful. It dissipates resistance, and it sets up, if not completely establishes, the illusion of participation, choice, and control. Does this make sense? Principle 2, artful vagueness. When I say at some point, I leave it up to them, totally up to them as to when, right? Although I do put a parameter on it. I say in the coming week. So it's not so vague that it takes forever and it fades out. So I'm sort of setting a very, very vague boundary. Nonetheless, the boundary is there to be totally accurate. So at some point in the coming week, well, I don't know when that means. I'm also vague exactly as to how or to where or into what way they're going to find themselves thinking about the conversation. I don't say where. Are they going to be strolling along? Are they going to be laying in bed? I don't tell them any of that. So by leaving it vague, their imagination fills in the blank, and it gives them the feeling that they're the ones who are going to actually create this experience. Very, very powerful, artful vagueness. Knowing when to be vague and when to be specific, and how and when to fractionate back and forth between those two things is incredibly powerful. With very, very, very skilled persuaders, and I don't think any of them really know this consciously, extremely skilled persuaders have a rhythm, a pattern of fractionation back and forth between being vague and being specific. Now, they don't know this, but you should know it consciously. It's extremely powerful. Let's look at the next piece of languaging. You might find yourself thinking about this conversation. Might is a softener. Again, it softens any possibility of resistance. I'm not saying you will. The minute if I said you will find yourself thinking about this conversation, that is really turning me into a know-it-all, a bossy boots, a dictator, and that's not what I want to do. Find yourself. Find yourself is an example of what I call a trance phrase. It's both a trance phrase and a command. Find yourself implies a behavior that you don't have conscious control of. Now, this is very interesting. By being vague, I'm implying that they are going to participate, that they are going to control and create the outcome. On the other side of the cover, by saying find yourself, I'm now putting it back into the realm of something that just happens to them. Isn't that interesting? By being vague as to when, and by saying I'm not sure or I don't know, I leave it to them to create the experience. But now, when I say find yourself is very hypnotic because it implies a compulsion, something that happens outside of your control. We know this is part of the pattern for the blowjob pattern. You ever just find yourself reaching for the refrigerator, and before you even realize it consciously, you're already looking in going, wait a minute, I'm not even hungry? So you ever just find yourself running a train through your head? Find yourself is something that sets up a hypnotic process. Find yourself. And now I say thinking about this conversation, again, it's vague. I'm not saying in what way they'll find themselves thinking about the conversation. I'm not saying even what parts of the conversation they'll find themselves thinking about. Did I say you'll find yourself thinking about each detail of the conversation? So I'm being vague as to how it'll happen. I'm being vague as to what parts of the conversation they're going to be thinking about. I'm being pretty vague as to when. I'm just setting the parameter of a week. Right? So it's very, very, very vague. It's vague, yet at the same time it's surrounded by specificity, which is very interesting. You'll think to yourself. Again, think to yourself is a very hypnotic thing. I want you to notice the distinction. First of all, it's a command. You'll think to yourself. And notice how it's hypnotic. If I said, what's the difference between saying you'll think versus you'll think to yourself? If I said, you're going to think I want to talk to Ross Jeffries versus you'll think to yourself, I want to talk to Ross Jeffries. Think to yourself implies a sort of split in consciousness. There's the part of you that's doing the thinking and the part of you that's receiving the thinking. It sets up a sort of hypnotic dissociation. This requires a deeper level of processing and makes it far more hypnotic. So these subtle little distinctions in language can sometimes make a huge difference. Oftentimes in speed seduction, the exact wording doesn't matter, but there are times when it does, and this is one of those times. Think to yourself is very clever. No one will ever catch that you're creating a hypnotic dissociation when you talk to them like this. Very, very clever, very extremely powerful. Really, really masterful persuaders use this. I don't think they're necessarily aware of it. Part of my job as a teacher is to bring to the light those things that are done accidentally or in darkness. Now, notice in the next phrase, we're finally going to get really specific. Up until now, the structure has been vague, at some point, vague, I don't know exactly when, vague, you'll find yourself, I'm not telling them in which way or how they'll find themselves. And now we're finally going to get specific and directive. So vague, 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 vague. Now we get specific and directive. If you start out specific and directive, you will be dissipated and pushed away. If you're vague, 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 and then get specific and directive, they're going to follow the directive. This is really clever. This is cool stuff. You see my enthusiasm here talking about this because this is the fucking dynamite shit. I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. Notice the phrasing. I didn't say I want to talk to that guy again. I got to call him. I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. Now this phrasing is very powerful. I'm shifting between I and you. Now this is powerful because this is the actual form and structure of how people talk to themselves on the inside when they're motivating themselves to actually do something. Not just something they're considering, but think about that. When you're going to get yourself moving, don't you say to yourself, you got to get going. Or, come on, Joe, you got to get going. Right? Or you got to do this. So by following the exact structure of how people naturally talk to themselves on the inside anyway, you're putting people through that structure so they're going to act as if it really is something that they've got to do. I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. The I wanna part is talking about what the desire is. The you gotta is the part that speaks in a way that motivates people into action. Now there's one more final distinction, one more final little bit that's rolled inside of this little bit of languaging, which is I wanna and you gotta are infantile forms of speaking to oneself. They're the infantile forms of saying, or at least you could say the immature forms or the juvenile forms of saying, I want to and you have to. And because they are infantile forms, it appeals to and activates a younger and much more suggestive, much more responsive part of the mind. You see how in that one little phrase, you're creating a hypnotic dissociation and an age regression just by the artful use of language. Do you see the power of this?
It's really, really extraordinary. And all of this is being piled on in the space of 3 or 4 phrases. And I can guarantee you, when you use 2 or more powerful principles and tools directly at the same time with each other or immediately in sync with each other, you're going to get somewhere. When you use 3 or 4 combined with a proper selection of subject, you're going to do some awesome stuff. And then finally, you're giving the behavioral command. You'll reach for my number right here on this card. Where's that damn card? I put it away. I'm sorry, guys. You'll reach for my number right here on this card. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, and then you'll call me. Why do I not say, what would the difference be between saying, and you'll reach for my number right here on this card, and then you'll call me? Because when you don't say you'll call me, it's implied. The only way you're going to reach for the number right here on the card is if the intent is to do it so you can call the person. And remember the commands previously. I want to talk to that guy again. You got to call him. Well, so I'm already giving that command. You got to call him, aren't I? I've already said you've got to call him. So when I say you'll reach for my number right here on this card, that activates the behavior of calling. You see? And also, there's a blank there, so she'll fill it in. Now, when I present the card, the emphasis is on the word here, and I place it spatially, right in front of her face. Not like that, but like it would be like an arm's length in front of her face. So effectively, you see their pupils dilate, and you take a snapshot of it. You'll reach for my number right here on this card, right here on this card, and you'll see them take a little snapshot of it. And what happens is it stores the image of the card, so when they go through this whole process of thinking about the conversation, the image of my card being right in their face will pop up in their mind, which reinforces the suggestion to reach for the card. It's really, really clever. This is artful. This is one area where you've got to get it specifically and exactly correct. Here's your assignment. I want you to get into the members area and discuss the principles in this pattern. Where else might these principles be useful for application other than seduction? And then I want you to get in there and create some examples of language that you can use for these principles in those other applications. And finally, I want you to go out and try this. Try it at least 10 times. 10 times is the number, generally speaking, of trials and repetitions you need to give to something to ensure that that you can really see that there's enough data to evaluate it. Okay, use this. This is cool shit. I love teaching.